I love eavesdropping on my husband's conversations with his mom. I never thought I'd be the kind of wife who hides in the hallway just to listen to her husband talk on the phone. But here I am, not in a sneaky, checking up on him kind of way, more like a soft, emotional curiosity. Because every time he calls his mom, something in him changes, and I can't help but listen. My husband, Aaron, is 33. We've been married for 4 years, and together for almost 8. He's a quiet, grounded guy. The kind of person who doesn't need to fill silence. When he talks, it's measured and calm, sometimes even dry. I'm the opposite. I'm chatty, emotional, and wear my heart like it's an accessory. But the moment he picks up the phone and I hear, "Hey, Mom," it's like watching him turn into a different person. His mom, Ellen, lives in Ohio, we're in Colorado. She's one of those women who manages to make warmth radiate through a phone line. She's funny, a little sarcastic, and endlessly supportive. The first time I met her, I was nervous. I've had the stereotypical difficult mother-in-law before in a past relationship, and I was braced for battle. But Ellen hugged me like she'd known me for years and told me, "Thank you for making my boy happy." That was that. But it wasn't until after we got married that I started noticing the pattern. Every Sunday morning, like clockwork, Aaron brews coffee, sits by the kitchen window, and calls her. I used to give them privacy, but once, I walked by on my way to grab something, and I caught part of the conversation. It wasn't gossip or small talk, it was just real. He said, "Yeah, I still make her tea before bed, even when we fight," and Ellen laughed and said, "That's how you stay married, sweetheart. 1 cup of tea at a time." That line stuck with me. Now it's become this guilty little ritual. When Sunday rolls around, I'll be in the next room pretending to scroll on my phone or fold laundry. But really, I'm listening, not for drama, just for these small glimpses of him that I never get to see otherwise. Sometimes he tells her things he'd never say out loud to me. Like when my dad got sick last year, and I shut down emotionally. Aaron didn't push me to talk. I thought he didn't care much, but one morning I overheard him say, "I just don't know how to help her without making it worse." Ellen's voice softened. "You don't fix it, honey. You just stay next to her until she lets you in." I cried silently in the hallway that day. He's vulnerable with her in a way that's quiet, unassuming. He'll tell her about work stress, about his anxiety, about the tiny details of our life that seem so trivial to anyone else. One time he told her how I hum when I cook, how it's always the same tune, and that he catches himself waiting for it now. Ellen laughed and said, "That's how you know you're home. I never interrupt. I never join the call. I think that's partly why I treasure it. It's this window into his softness, a space I don't want to intrude on. But last month, something happened that made me rethink everything. It was a random Wednesday. Aaron was working from home, and Ellen called. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop this time. I was just passing through the living room to grab a drink. But his tone was different. He sounded upset. "Mom, she's been distant lately," he said, his voice low. "I know she's stressed, but I feel like she's somewhere else half the time." My stomach dropped. He was talking about me. I froze by the doorway. Ellen sighed. "Have you told her that?" "I don't want to make her feel worse," he said. "She's been through so much with work, with her dad's treatment. I don't want to add to it, sweetheart," she said gently. "You're not adding to it. You're her husband if she's shutting down. You help her find her way back." He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he whispered, "I just don't want her to think I'm unhappy. Because I'm not, I just miss us." That broke me. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I replayed his words over and over, wondering how long he'd been feeling that way. I hadn't even noticed how withdrawn I'd become. My dad's illness, the late work hours, the stress, it had all piled up. And Aaron had been quietly carrying the weight of both of us. When I finally brought it up that weekend, I didn't tell him I overheard the call. I just told him I missed us too. He smiled, soft, surprised, and said, "You do?" We talked for hours that night. I told him I'd been struggling, that I didn't mean to shut him out. He told me he never doubted that I loved him. He just missed the version of me that used to curl up next to him after dinner. Rambling about nothing, that conversation changed something. We've been more intentional since we started going on morning walks again, making dinner together, actually talking. Not every day, not perfectly, but enough that it feels like we're finding our rhythm again. And yes, he still calls his mom every Sunday. But now, when I hear him on the phone, I don't hide in the hallway. I'll walk in, refill his coffee, kiss his head, and wave at the phone. Ellen always greets me with, "Hey, sweetheart, you keeping him in line?" We laugh, and Aaron always says, "She's the boss, Mom." It's funny. People make jokes about mothers-in-law being overbearing or intrusive. But Ellen? She's the quiet glue that holds this little corner of our family together. She raised a man who listens, who feels deeply, who doesn't run from vulnerability. And even though I'll probably never admit it to her, she's taught me a lot too, about patience, about gentleness, and about the quiet ways love shows up when you're not looking. So yeah, I still love eavesdropping on their calls. Not because I'm nosy, but because it reminds me that the man I married has layers I'm still discovering. And that love, real love, sometimes sounds like a son saying, "I'm trying, Mom," and a mother replying, "I know, sweetheart. I know, update." It's been a few months since I wrote that post, and I honestly didn't think there'd be anything worth updating. But life has this funny way of shifting the ground right under you when you start to feel steady again. Aaron and I have been in a really good place lately. We've gotten closer than we've been in years. It's not perfect, no relationship ever is, but the small things feel alive again. Morning coffee together, evening walks around the neighborhood, falling asleep with his hand on my back. Those tiny gestures that used to feel routine now feel sacred. But 3 weeks ago, Aaron got a phone call that knocked the wind out of both of us. It was a Friday evening, and we were cooking dinner together. Him chopping vegetables, me stirring sauce. I remember because he'd just teased me about burning the garlic again. His phone buzzed on the counter. He looked at it and smiled. "Mom's calling. She probably wants to tell me about her new neighbors or something." But as soon as he picked up, I saw his face change. The warmth drained from his expression like someone had pulled the plug. I heard him say, "Wait, what happened?" It was his sister, not Ellen. She said Ellen had collapsed at home. They thought it might have been a stroke. Aaron dropped everything and just froze. He didn't even blink for a few seconds. Then he turned to me, pale as a ghost, and whispered, "I have to go." We got him the earliest flight to Ohio the next morning. I couldn't go right away because of work, but I promised I'd join him in a few days. That weekend was chaos. Calls, updates, tests, doctors. Ellen was in the ICU, stable but unresponsive for the first day. Aaron barely slept. Every time we talked, he sounded hollow. I tried to comfort him, but I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. He told me he sat by her bed all night, holding her hand, talking to her even though she couldn't respond. And then, this is the part that stuck with me. He told me he'd been talking about me. He said, "I just kept telling her how much you've helped me, how we're doing better, how you and I are trying again." I think she'd want to know that. That broke me. Because even in his mom's hospital room, his instinct was to reassure her that we were okay, that her son was loved. When I finally got there, I walked into that hospital room expecting heartbreak. But Ellen was awake. Weak. Tired, but awake. She smiled the moment she saw Aaron. And when she looked at me, her eyes crinkled the same way they always did. She tried to speak, but her voice was barely a whisper. I leaned in to hear her. "Take care of my boy," she murmured. I laughed softly, tears streaming down my face. "Always," I said. She reached for my hand and squeezed it. For a few seconds, it was just the three of us, holding hands in that quiet hospital room while the machines beeped softly in the background. Ellen recovered slowly, but she had to move into assisted living afterward. She's still sharp and witty, but her body's weaker now. The hardest part for Aaron was accepting that she wasn't the same woman who could spend hours gardening or walking around her neighborhood. After she was moved, Aaron called her every single night. Not just Sundays anymore. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. I still overhear them from time to time, and it's different now. The conversations are slower, tender in a way that makes your chest ache. He doesn't just talk to her, he soothes her. One night, about a week ago, I was coming home late from work. When I walked in, the house was quiet, except for his voice from the living room. He was on speakerphone. He said, "You know, Mom, I think I finally understand why you always said love is work. It's not the kind of work that drains you. It's the kind that teaches you how to stay." There was a long pause, and Ellen said faintly, "That's my boy." I stood there in the hallway, hand over my mouth, just letting the tears fall. Later that night, I told Aaron something I never thought I would. I admitted I used to listen in on those Sunday calls. I expected him to be mad or maybe even hurt, but he just smiled and said, "I know." I was stunned. "You knew?" He nodded. "You're not as sneaky as you think. I could see your shadow in the hallway sometimes." My face turned red. "And you didn't say anything?" He shrugged. "I liked knowing you wanted to hear it. Those calls aren't secrets, they're just another part of who I am. We sat there for a long time that night. No words. Just quiet understanding. Now, things are different. Ellen's health is fragile, but her spirit's still the same. She sends us little handwritten notes every week, quotes she likes, recipes she's rediscovering, reminders to water your love like it's a houseplant, Erin frames them. I'm not kidding. We have a small corkboard in the kitchen now. Filled with her notes, I still listen to their conversations sometimes, not to eavesdrop, but because it feels like home. I'll hear her tell him she loves him, and he'll say, "Love you more," in that playful, boyish tone that only comes out when he's talking to her. And every single time, I feel grateful that I get to love a man who loves like that, quietly, deeply, without ego. So yeah, I still listen, but now, it's with the door open, heart full, and no guilt. Because those conversations aren't just between him and his mom anymore. They're a reminder of what real love sounds like when you stop and listen long enough to hear it. Final update, it's been almost a year since I first wrote about Erin and his mom. I didn't plan to update again, but I've been sitting here tonight, staring at this little corkboard full of Ellen's handwritten notes, and something in me feels like it's time. Ellen passed away 2 months ago. Even though we knew it was coming, her health had been declining steadily since the stroke. It still hit like a freight train. You can prepare for loss all you want, but nothing truly readies you for the silence that follows it. The day it happened, Erin and I were actually at her assisted living facility. She'd been having trouble breathing, so we drove down after his sister called. When we walked into her room, it was filled with sunlight. The nurses had opened the curtains, and the morning breeze carried the faint smell of lilacs from the garden outside. Ellen was sitting up in bed, eyes half closed, humming something soft under her breath. When she saw Erin, she smiled, weak but real. He immediately went to her side, held her hand and said, "Hey Mom, we're here." She looked at me too and whispered, "You came," I said. "Of course, wouldn't be anywhere else," she chuckled. A quiet, shaky sound, good girl, that was Ellen. Even on her last day, still handing out praise like she was tucking warmth into people's pockets. We stayed with her all day, talked, laughed, shared memories. She was in and out of consciousness near the end, but she never seemed scared, just peaceful. At one point, Erin leaned over and kissed her forehead. He said, "Love you." "Mom," she opened her eyes and whispered, "Love you more." Those were her last words. Afterward, everything blurred. The funeral, the calls, the condolences. But what I remember most is how quiet Erin became. Not in a cold way, just internal. Like he was carrying something delicate he couldn't put into words yet. A week after the funeral, we were helping clean out her room. His sister, Emily, found a small wooden box labeled "For Erin and Lily." That's me. Inside were 2 letters, folded neatly. The first one was short, written to both of us. She thanked us for visiting her, for taking care of each other, and ended it with, "Keep talking. That's how love stays alive." The second letter was just for Erin. He read it in silence, and then handed it to me. Eyes glistening, it said, "You always thought I was calling to talk, but I was really calling to listen, you and Lily. Don't ever forget how lucky you are to have each other. If you ever feel like you're drifting apart, make time to really listen again. It's the same thing you used to do for me every Sunday. You gave me peace without realizing it. Give that to each other too." I must have read it 5 times that day. That letter changed something in him, and in me. Erin started recording little voice memos on his phone every night. Not full conversations, just small reflections. Sometimes he talks about work, sometimes about memories with Ellen, sometimes about us. And then he'll play one back to me while we're lying in bed, saying, "This is what I would have told Mom today." It's the most intimate thing. Healing through the same habit that once connected them. A few weeks ago, I found one of Ellen's old notes tucked inside one of Erin's cookbooks. It said, "Teach someone your favorite recipe before it's too late." Erin smiled when I showed it to him. That night, he taught me how to make her chicken pot pie, the one she used to bring over every Thanksgiving. We cooked together, laughing, crying, remembering. When we sat down to eat, I swear it tasted exactly the way Ellen used to make it. We've kept her tradition of Sunday calls alive, but now it's our version. Every Sunday morning, Erin and I go for a drive with no destination. Phones off, just the 2 of us talking. About life, work, random memories. Sometimes we argue, sometimes we just sit in silence. But it's our ritual now. I don't think I realized it back when I used to secretly listen to their phone calls. But what I loved most wasn't just hearing Erin's voice. It was hearing the kind of love that's patient and intentional. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be felt. Ellen's gone, but her voice is everywhere. In the recipes on our fridge. In the gentle way Erin touches my shoulder when I'm upset. In the love you more that we now say to each other before bed. The last note she ever sent us is framed on the wall by the kitchen. It reads, "The best part of love is listening when the other person doesn't realize you are." Every time I pass it, I smile. Because that's how this all started. Me, eavesdropping from a hallway, and somehow, through all the heartbreak and growth, it's exactly how it should have ended. Still listening. Still loving, just more honestly now, stories number 2. I had a raunchy conversation on my empty rooftop pool, and it turns out it wasn't as empty as I thought. So, I 28F live in an apartment complex that's way fancier than I can actually afford. It's one of those luxury urban living places where they advertise rooftop lounges and infinity pools to justify charging you half your paycheck for a studio the size of a cereal box. I live there because I lucked into a discounted lease when my friend moved out early. And honestly, the rooftop pool has been the one thing keeping me sane this summer. Anyway, this all happened a few nights ago. It was one of those perfect warm evenings where the sky is turning that soft, orange-pink color, and I decided to head up to the roof with a bottle of wine, my swimsuit, and my best friend Tessa now. Tessa and I have been best friends since high school, which means we've shared just about every kind of conversation imaginable. We're both loud, we cackle like witches, and we're the kind of people who think we're whispering when we're absolutely not. So we go up there and, miracle of miracles, the place is completely empty. No kids, no couples, no influencers taking selfies. Just us in the sunset. We're stretched out on pool loungers, half in the water, half basking in the golden light, drinking cheap rosé out of metal tumblers like we're sophisticated. We start talking about relationships, because of course we do. Tessa recently started seeing this guy named Ryan, and she was trying to figure out if he was relationship material or good-for-now material. I may have been a little buzzed when I said, "Well, how's the chemistry?" And from there, it devolved for the next hour. We had what I can only describe as the most unfiltered, chaotic, girls' night conversation in the history of rooftop pools. We talked about everything. I mean everything. From her new guy's bedroom quirks to my ex's unfortunate tattoo placement. There was laughter, shrieking, probably too many curse words, and me nearly choking on wine from laughing so hard when Tessa tried to mimic a noise Ryan apparently makes. We weren't being gross on purpose. It was just two friends venting, joking, letting off steam, but we were definitely not speaking in library voices. At one point, Tessa says, "Oh my God, imagine if someone's down there right now listening to this." And I said, "No way, it's literally empty." We're fine, reader. We were not fine. Fast forward to the next morning. I'm walking out of my apartment on my way to work, feeling all relaxed and glowy from my rooftop therapy session. As I wait for the elevator, one of my neighbors, this very polite, middle-aged man named Mark, walks by and gives me this look, kind of a smirk, kind of trying not to laugh. He goes, "So, the rooftop's got good acoustics, huh?" I froze. My stomach dropped so fast I swear I heard it hit the floor. I laughed awkwardly and said, "What do you mean?" Praying he was referring to music or something, he said, "Oh, nothing, just, it carries the sound. We could, hear you two having fun up there." I think I blacked out for a second. Apparently, there's this slight design flaw in the building. The rooftop pool area has these open grates that vent down into the central courtyard, and the sound travels straight down like a megaphone, which means everyone on the 4th and 5th floors got a front row seat to Tessa and me discussing Ryan's enthusiasm and my ex's terrible technique. Mark was trying to be cool about it, but the way he kept glancing at me like he was trying not to laugh told me he'd definitely heard enough to know details I'd rather die than repeat. I immediately texted Tessa like, "I think we accidentally performed a live podcast for my entire building." She responded, "Hot, should I start selling tickets?" Meanwhile, I was ready to move out of the country. The next few days were a blur of humiliation. The guy at the front desk, Ethan, started greeting me with a slightly too knowing smile. A woman from the floor below mine, I think her name's Karen or Kara, I couldn't quite tell, actually winked at me in the lobby. I couldn't even go up to the pool without feeling like the building was silently judging me. Then, a few days later, I got the email, apparently. The building's management received noise complaints from several tenants about inappropriate conversations on the rooftop after hours. They reminded residents that the common spaces were for family-friendly enjoyment, I swear. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me, I replied, all formal and professional, saying I'd remind guests to maintain appropriate noise levels. Meanwhile, Tessa texted me, "Did we just get banned for being too hot?" I laughed, but honestly, the embarrassment was next level. Every time I saw someone in the elevator, I wondered, did you hear me talking about Ryan's weird nickname for his own chest? But here's the kicker. About a week later, I was heading to the gym in the building and ran into Mark again. He was with his wife this time, lovely woman, super sweet, and she goes, "Oh, you're the rooftop comedian." I wanted to die. Mark started laughing and said, "Honey, don't embarrass her." But she just kept smiling and said, "No, seriously, you made my week. We were cracking up. You girls sounded like you were having so much fun." And that somehow made it both better and worse, because on one hand, okay, they weren't horrified. They thought it was funny. On the other, that meant they definitely heard the entire thing. I mumbled something about glad we could entertain, and ran away before I melted into a puddle of shame. I've since developed what I call rooftop PTSD. I still go up there sometimes, but only with headphones, and only when it's completely empty. I triple-check that nobody's below and that the wind isn't carrying my voice anywhere. Tessa, of course, finds the entire thing hilarious. She keeps threatening to bring Ryan up there for round 2 and see if anyone gives him a Yelp review. In hindsight, it's kind of funny, mortifying but funny, and honestly, it's a good reminder that you never really know who's listening. Literally. At least now I know the rooftop isn't that private. And maybe I gave a few of my neighbors something to laugh about, just not exactly the way I planned update, so I wasn't planning on ever updating this. Mostly because every time I think about that night, my entire soul wants to crawl into a broom closet and live there forever. But a few people asked if I ever faced my neighbors again, or if things cooled down, and oh boy, did things cool down. It's been about a month since the great rooftop incident. I had been doing everything in my power to keep a low profile. You know that feeling when you just know people know something about you but everyone's pretending not to? That was my entire existence for a few weeks. I started avoiding eye contact in the hallways. I'd wear big sunglasses in the lobby, even when it was cloudy. I even started timing my laundry room trips for weird hours, like 10:45 p.m. on a Wednesday, so I wouldn't run into anyone who might have heard my rooftop broadcast. But avoidance only works for so long. A few Saturdays ago, the building announced a Resident Appreciation Summer Social on the rooftop. Free food, music, and drinks. Basically an event designed to force everyone to mingle and pretend we're a happy little community, instead of 200 people silently judging each other over recycling habits and hallway noise. I told myself I wasn't going. No way was I going to stand on that rooftop again, surrounded by people who probably still remembered my play-by-play of Tessa's romantic life. But then Tessa, who is clearly chaos in human form, texted me, "You have to go. It's your redemption arc." I told her absolutely not. She replied with a photo of herself already in a sundress with a bottle of rosé captioned, "I'm outside your building." And that's how I ended up going to the party. When we got up there, the first thing I noticed was that the vibe was actually pretty nice. String lights, a local band, some catered tacos, people laughing and chatting for a moment. I even forgot about the humiliation. That lasted approximately 4 minutes. Because right as I was grabbing a plate, I heard someone say, "Oh, it's the rooftop podcast girl." I froze mid-taco reach. It was Ethan, the front desk guy. He was smiling like he'd just spotted a celebrity. He laughed and said, "Don't worry, your secret's safe with me." Then he leaned in and whispered, "For the record, you're not even in the top 5 craziest things I've heard from up there." Apparently, people have done far worse things on that rooftop. Arguments, breakups, adult activities, even a proposal gone wrong. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. Tessa found this hilarious, obviously. She started joking about starting an actual podcast called Roof Confessions, where we just drink wine and overshare about our love lives. I wanted to sink into the pool, but as the night went on, I started talking to more people, cautiously at first, and it turned out nobody really cared. Most people thought it was funny. A couple of my neighbors admitted they'd been in similar oops everyone heard me moments. One woman, Janelle, said, "Girl, I once butt-dialed a group chat and left a 10-minute voicemail about my boyfriend snoring. You're fine." Even Mark and his wife, Sandy, came up to say hi. Sandy handed me a drink and said, "You've officially become part of building lore. Everyone loves a good story." It was surreal. Like walking into a nightmare and realizing it wasn't that bad after all. Then came the weirdest part. Toward the end of the night, one of the property managers, Colin, got up to make a speech thanking everyone for coming. He was trying to hype up the sense of community. And then he said, and I quote, "And remember, folks, the rooftop has great acoustics, so be careful what you share up there." Half the crowd laughed. A few people turned and looked directly at me. I wanted to throw myself into the taco bar, but I did what any self-respecting, overly mortified adult would do. I raised my drink, smiled, and said loudly, "Lesson learned." Everyone laughed. And that was that. We ended up staying for hours. Tessa made friends with half the building. Ryan even showed up later. And I realized that maybe embarrassment doesn't kill you. It just temporarily fries your ego. The real kicker came the following week, though. Someone in the building made a group chat on the resident app, like a casual community chat for events, recommendations, etc., and the name of the group? Rooftop Confessions. I swear I almost uninstalled the app, but then people started posting memes about it, like jokes about being careful on the rooftop or fake podcast cover art. And it actually became kind of a funny bonding thing. So now, instead of being that girl who embarrassed herself, I'm kind of that girl who accidentally started an inside joke. It's weirdly wholesome. Actually, do I still die inside every time I remember that people probably heard me describing someone's bedroom habits in vivid detail? Yes, absolutely. But it's also kind of freeing, because at least now, whenever something embarrassing happens to someone else in the building, they'll go, "Hey, at least I'm not the rooftop girl." And honestly, I'll take that legacy. Final update. It's been almost 6 months since the rooftop incident, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but that night ended up changing my life in the weirdest, most unexpectedly wholesome way possible. After the resident party, everything slowly returned to normal, or at least our new version of normal. The Rooftop Confessions group chat became the most active thread in the building. At first, it was all memes and gentle teasing, like someone would post a photo of a sunset and caption it, "Keeping my secrets safe tonight." Then it evolved into an actual community. People started organizing game nights, BBQs, dog playdates. Somehow, my humiliating moment created a sense of camaraderie in a building where no one even used to say hi in the elevator. I never would have guessed that public embarrassment could be so community building. And here's where things take a turn I didn't see coming. Around mid-September, a new guy moved into the building. Caleb. He was renting the unit 2 floors below mine. I first met him in the elevator when he was juggling boxes labeled kitchen stuff and recording gear. He had this easy smile and a t-shirt that said, "Podcast people do it louder," which nearly made me choke. When I told him the story behind that, he burst out laughing. "Wait," he said, "you're that rooftop girl?" I sighed and said, "Unfortunately, yes, the one and only." Instead of cringing, he grinned. "Honestly, that's kind of legendary." That was the beginning of a weirdly perfect friendship. Caleb's actually a sound engineer who works freelance, mostly for indie podcasts and musicians. He thought the whole situation was hilarious and even offered to help me produce an episode if I ever decided to make Rooftop Confessions a real thing. I thought he was kidding. But one night we were up there, drinking wine under the string lights, and he pulled out a tiny microphone from his hoodie pocket like some kind of podcast fairy. I remember laughing so hard I snorted. "Caleb," I said, "you're insane. Just embrace your legacy," he said. "You've already got the brand recognition." That became our thing. Rooftop hangs, long talks about the most random stuff. We'd start recording mock episodes just for fun. Topics like the ethics of eavesdropping, or top 5 embarrassing moments that somehow turned into blessings. I didn't realize it at first, but somewhere in between those late-night laughs and deep talks, I started really liking him. One night in October, the weather was starting to cool, and the rooftop was mostly empty. We brought up hot chocolate and a blanket, and I remember him saying, "You know, I've listened to hundreds of people talk into microphones, but you sound like someone I could listen to for the rest of my life." And yeah, that was the moment. I didn't even care that it sounded cheesy, because it felt like the universe had taken one of my worst moments and spun it into something genuine and beautiful. We started dating not long after that. By December, Caleb helped me launch Rooftop Confessions as an actual mini podcast. We kept it small, just neighbors and friends telling funny or heartfelt stories over drinks. It's half comedy, half therapy with a view. We never thought anyone outside the building would care, but a few clips we posted online went viral. Suddenly, people were sending in their own confessions to read anonymously. It's grown into something real. People connect over it. I even got messages from folks saying it made them feel less alone about their embarrassing moments. If you'd told me a year ago that the night I drunkenly gossiped about my friend's love life would somehow lead to a relationship, a creative project, and an actual community, I would have laughed you off the rooftop. But here we are. Even Tessa, the original chaos gremlin who started this whole mess, has become our unofficial co-host sometimes. She calls herself the PR department, which mostly means she drinks wine and roasts me mid-episode. We record under the stars now. Microphones, soft lights, a little sign Caleb made that says on air, maybe keep it PG. The neighbors don't mind. In fact, sometimes they join in. And as much as I cringe when I remember that night, the cold panic, the mortification, the thought that I'd have to move and change my name, I also think it might have been the best mistake I ever made, because if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have found my people. I wouldn't have met Caleb. I wouldn't have rediscovered how freeing it is to laugh at yourself and own your humanity. Messy bits and all. So yeah, I'm the rooftop girl, and now, I kind of love that. Stories number 3. He said it was just a modeling gig. Then I saw the photos. So, I never thought I'd be that person writing on Reddit. But here I am, I'm 31, and my husband, who's 33, did something recently that left me feeling blindsided, embarrassed, and honestly kind of betrayed. It's one of those situations that sounds funny on the surface, almost sitcom level. But when you're living it, it doesn't feel funny at all. A few months ago, my husband Ryan lost his job. He was laid off from his marketing position when the company downsized, and it hit him hard. He's always been proud of being the provider type, so losing that stability really messed with him. I tried to be supportive, telling him we'd figure things out together. I even picked up extra shifts at my design firm to help with bills. During that time, Ryan started going to the gym a lot more. At first I thought it was great. Exercise helps with stress, right? But then he started spending hours there every day. He bought new workout clothes, started tracking macros, and talked about getting his body market ready. I thought he meant it metaphorically, like being ready for job interviews. I was wrong. One night, over dinner, he told me he got an offer to do some part-time modeling. He said a photographer from an agency approached him at the gym and mentioned that Abercrombie & Fitch was doing a regional campaign. He said they wanted realistic athletic guys in their 30s for an upcoming rebrand. I laughed at first because it sounded so random, but he seemed genuinely excited, so I said, sure, why not? That's kinda cool. He told me it wasn't a big deal, just a few pictures for their online catalog, and that he'd be compensated well for it. I asked if he had a contract or if it was through a legit agency, and he brushed it off, saying the photographer had connections, and he didn't want to jinx it by over-explaining. A week later, he had the shoot. He told me it was super casual and professional. When he got home, I asked to see the photos, but he said they weren't ready yet, and that the company had to approve them first. Again, I didn't think much of it at the time. Fast forward about 3 weeks, and I was at work scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from a local college student. It was a meme-style post, with a photo of my husband, shirtless, standing in front of what looked like an Abercrombie store backdrop, wearing nothing but jeans unbuttoned halfway down and that typical brooding model expression. The caption said, "When your dad quits his job and becomes the new face of Abercrombie thirst traps." The post had thousands of shares and comments. People were joking, thirsting, tagging their friends. I froze. I couldn't even process it. My husband, the one who told me it was just a simple photo shoot, was half naked all over social media. I immediately texted him, "What the hell is this?" He replied, "It's the campaign. Chill. It's nothing inappropriate." When he came home, I confronted him. I asked why he didn't tell me the photos were like that. He said, "You're overreacting. It's modeling. This is what modeling looks like." I told him it wasn't the modeling part that bothered me. It was the secrecy. The fact that he didn't prepare me for how public and sexualized it was. His pictures were plastered across social media, and people were literally calling him Hot Gym Dad. To make matters worse, his co-workers from his old job started teasing him in a group chat. Some even sent screenshots to mutual friends of ours. I felt humiliated, not because I'm jealous or insecure, but because everyone else found out before I did what kind of job he'd actually agreed to. A few days later, I found out he had an Instagram page under a separate name, one he'd been using to post behind-the-scenes shots from the photo shoot. The captions were full of fitness motivation and modeling journey hashtags. When I confronted him about it, he admitted he didn't tell me because he thought I'd kill the vibe. At that point, I'd had enough. I didn't want to be the angry, controlling wife. But I also didn't want to be the naive partner whose husband was out there posting thirst traps under a fake name. So I commented on one of the viral posts. I said, "Proud wife here? Didn't realize this was part of the professional shoot you said was just for the catalog? Yeah. It was petty, I know, but it went viral again." And this time, people were joking about how he got caught. He was furious with me. He said I embarrassed him and ruined his chances at future gigs. He ended up deleting his separate Instagram and tried to say I overreacted. But now, our relationship feels tense. We barely talk without arguing. Every time I see him at the gym or taking selfies in good lighting, I feel that mix of anger and sadness. He's been saying I exposed him and that I don't respect his hustle. But I can't shake the feeling that he crossed a line first. He made a major life choice, something very public and very intimate, without including me in it. So now I'm sitting here wondering if I really did go too far by calling him out publicly. I get that social media can be unforgiving, but he's the one who decided to make his shirtless body a brand. I just held up a mirror to what he was already doing. Still, every time I think about that Facebook post, and the thousands of people commenting about my husband's abs, I get this tight, sick feeling in my chest. Not because of jealousy, but because I feel like I'm married to someone I don't recognize anymore. So, a lot has happened since that whole Abercrombie thirst trap fiasco. Honestly, I thought things would cool off after a few weeks, but it's somehow gotten both quieter and heavier between us. The kind of silence that doesn't mean peace. Just tension that sits in the room like static. Right after everything blew up, Ryan and I tried to talk it through. The first few conversations went nowhere. Every time I brought up how I felt blindsided, he'd pivot to how I'd humiliated him online. He said he lost a potential collaboration because some agency didn't want drama attached to his name. I wanted to laugh at the irony. He wanted fame, and now he was mad that people actually noticed him. For a while, we were basically roommates who occasionally argued about dishes and bills. He started spending even more time at the gym, sometimes coming home at midnight with some excuse about late workouts or meeting new photographers. I asked if he was seeing someone, and he got defensive. Called me paranoid, insecure, controlling. I don't think he's cheating, but I do think he's chasing validation. He's been obsessed with this idea of being noticed. He even mentioned getting an OnlyFans account just for fitness content, which made me choke on my coffee. I told him that was crossing a line, and he said, "It's just a platform. You're acting like it's porn." Meanwhile, I've been trying to untangle my own feelings. I started therapy because I realized this whole situation brought up things I didn't expect. Stuff about self-worth, trust, and what partnership actually means. My therapist, Laura, asked me something that's been bouncing around my head for weeks. Do you feel like he's your partner, or like you're managing his ego? And that question hit me hard because lately, it feels like the second one. I told Ryan I needed space. I moved into our guest room for a while. It wasn't some dramatic, we're done thing. It was just me trying to breathe without feeling like I had to tiptoe around his moods. He hated that. He said it made him feel abandoned and unsupported, which is kind of rich, considering he's been emotionally MIA for months. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I got a message from one of his old co-workers, Lindsay. She sent me a link to a Reddit post in a modeling forum, someone asking if they should go public with their relationship now that their gym partner was still technically married. My stomach dropped because the username was one I'd seen before. It was his. I confronted him, of course. He swore up and down it wasn't what it looked like, that he was just networking, and that people read too much into things. But when I asked him point blank if he'd been seeing anyone from the gym, he didn't say no. He just said, "It's not like that," which, let's be honest, is code for, "I can't admit it, but you're not wrong. I didn't throw him out or anything." But I told him he needed to leave for a while. He packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. The silence after he left was deafening, but also kind of a relief. In the last couple of weeks, I've realized something I didn't want to admit before. I think our marriage was already falling apart before the photos. The modeling thing wasn't the cause. It was just the spark that showed what was already broken. He called me a few days ago and said he wants to talk things through like adults. I agreed to meet him for coffee, and he showed up looking like the same man I fell in love with. Same smile, same warmth, but there was this performative edge to him. Like he was acting out being sincere. He said he misses me, that he never meant to make me feel small, and that he's just trying to build something new for himself. When I asked if that something new included honesty and communication, he said, "I'm learning," which sounds nice. But I've heard "I'm learning" enough times to know it doesn't mean much unless actions follow. He asked if I'd be willing to go to couples therapy. I said maybe, but I'm not committing to anything yet. I'm not ready to jump back into a relationship where I feel like an accessory to someone else's ego trip. The weird part is, people online have stopped talking about the viral photos. The internet moved on, but I can't seem to. It's like the world forgot. But the embarrassment and disappointment are still fresh in my head. A friend told me that I didn't expose him. I just revealed the truth he was hiding. And maybe that's why he's so angry. Not because I embarrassed him, but because I took away his control over the story he wanted to tell about himself. I don't know where things will go from here. Maybe we'll try counseling. Maybe we'll end things quietly and move on. But what I do know is that I've learned something valuable. You can love someone deeply and still decide they're not right for the person you're becoming. It's been a few months since I last posted, and honestly, I didn't think I'd ever come back to write an update. But so much has changed, both in my life and in how I see everything that happened, that it feels like I need to close the chapter properly. When Ryan left to stay with his friend, I thought it would be temporary. I told myself that space might help, that maybe we'd both cool down and find a way back to each other. But what actually happened was a slow, steady unraveling. The more time apart we had, the clearer things became, not just about him, but about me. At first, we kept texting. Little things, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Did you feed the cat?" But it quickly shifted into guilt trips and half-hearted apologies. He'd send long messages about how empty his apartment felt without me, followed by stories about how people were still recognizing him from those stupid shirtless photos. It was always about attention, good or bad. It didn't matter, as long as he was being talked about. He was satisfied when we finally met again. I tried to keep things civil. We went for coffee at a quiet place near the river. He looked tired. Not in the physical sense, but like someone who'd burned through too much of his own energy pretending everything was fine. He started with, "I miss you." And for a split second, I wanted to believe it. But then he launched into how much potential he had, how his brand was growing, and how I could still be part of it if I just supported him instead of judging. That's when I realized he didn't miss me. He missed the version of me that made his life easier. The emotional cheerleader who soothed his insecurity and managed his chaos. I told him that, and to his credit, he didn't argue. He just looked down and said, "I don't know how to fix that." We sat there for a long time. He apologized for embarrassing me, said he never wanted to make me feel small. But when I asked why he needed to keep chasing validation from strangers, he said, "I just like being seen." It broke something in me, because I realized no matter how much love I gave him, it would never be enough to fill that hole. A week later, I filed for separation. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just paperwork and silence. In the beginning, it felt like grief, the kind of grief that sneaks up on you in quiet moments, when I reached for an extra coffee mug, or when I saw someone at the gym who looked like him. But eventually, it started feeling like peace, like breathing without someone else's weight on my chest. I started spending more time with friends again, the ones I'd drifted from because I was always too busy managing his moods. I picked up painting again, something I hadn't done since college. It sounds cheesy, but it helped. There's something grounding about creating something that doesn't need to impress anyone. A few weeks ago, I ran into one of Ryan's old co-workers at the grocery store. She mentioned he'd quit the gym and started doing small-time modeling gigs online, mostly through Instagram partnerships. She said he seemed happy, but kind of lonely. I smiled politely and changed the subject. It wasn't out of bitterness. I just didn't want to carry his story anymore. The internet has long forgotten him. Those photos that once caused all the drama are buried under thousands of new trends. But for me, that whole experience changed how I look at relationships. And myself. I used to think love meant sticking it out, being loyal no matter what. But now I think love also means knowing when someone is using your loyalty as a safety net for their own ego. People always say you don't really know someone until they're tested. But I think the truth is, you don't really know yourself until you're tested. Until you're standing in the middle of a mess you didn't create, trying to decide whether to clean it up or walk away. I chose to walk away, and for the first time in a long time, the choice feels like freedom, not failure. Stories number 4. My boyfriend stopped washing his hair. I've been dating my boyfriend Marcus for almost 2 years. We met in grad school. He was the confident, artsy type with messy curls and a denim jacket that always smelled faintly of paint and coffee. I fell for him hard. He was passionate, funny, and could talk about everything from philosophy to bad 80s movies like it was the most interesting topic in the world. For the first year, things were perfect. He was clean, stylish in that laid-back way that didn't feel forced, and he took care of himself. Then slowly something changed. It started after he went on this minimalist, natural lifestyle kick. He got really into the idea that modern hygiene products were full of chemicals, ruining our bodies. At first, it was just switching to natural deodorant, which didn't bother me. Then he started making his own toothpaste out of baking soda and coconut oil. Again, weird but fine. But then, he stopped washing his hair. At first, he said it was temporary. Just a reset period, as he called it. He explained that shampoo strips your scalp of natural oils, and that if he stopped washing, his body would rebalance itself. I didn't argue. I figured it was a phase. The first week, his hair was a little greasy. The second week, it was worse. By the third, he smelled like a mix of sweat, scalp oil, and whatever air particles were hanging around the art studio he worked in. When we hugged, I'd catch this sour scent that made my nose wrinkle. I tried to be supportive. I asked questions, gently like, "Hey babe, are you sure this no shampoo thing is still working for you?" He'd smile that confident, dismissive smile and say, "Trust the process." Except the process was making him look and smell. Well, not good. It got to the point where his pillowcases started smelling off. When he stayed over, my apartment would hold on to that smell for days. Even my cat started avoiding him. I'd find little greasy marks on my couch where his head had been. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. We were watching a movie on my couch, and he leaned against me, resting his head on my shoulder. His hair brushed my cheek, and the smell hit me so hard I had to bite back a gag. I pulled away slightly, trying not to make it obvious. But he noticed. "What's wrong?" he asked. I froze. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. "Nothing. It's just, I think your hair might need a wash soon." He looked offended. "You don't get it, Lily. I'm 3 weeks in. This is when the detox happens. Once my scalp adjusts, it'll look amazing. Natural curls, volume, shine. It's science," I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded and said, "Okay, just maybe give it a rinse with water at least." He reluctantly agreed. That night, I heard the shower running for about 2 minutes. When he came out, his hair looked exactly the same. Oily. Matted, like it had been dunked in cooking oil. By the next week, I was making excuses not to cuddle. When he leaned in to kiss me, the smell was so distracting it made me flinch. I tried hinting again, even joking about it. "Hey, if you ever release your natural oils as a perfume line, please don't make me your first customer." He didn't laugh. Instead, he got defensive. "You've been brainwashed by the hygiene industry. You think if you don't smell like a flower, you're dirty. That's marketing. Real humans have natural scents." I tried to explain. There's a difference between natural scent and funk. But he just brushed me off. The final straw came one night when I stayed over at his apartment. He had just come home from a long day working on a mural. His hair was plastered to his head with sweat and paint flecks. He hugged me, and I swear, it was like being enveloped in a damp towel that had been sitting in a gym bag for a week. I tried to power through, I really did. But when I woke up the next morning, the pillow I'd been sleeping on had a visible grease stain. I sat up, looked at him sleeping peacefully beside me, and thought, I can't do this anymore. I didn't want to break up over something that sounded so superficial. But it wasn't just about hair anymore. It was about hygiene, respect, and stubbornness. I'd been trying to communicate how uncomfortable it made me, and instead of listening, he treated me like I was shallow. So I brought it up. Calmly, we were at his place, sitting at the table while he made his green tea. I told him I loved him. But his experiment was creating distance between us, literally and emotionally. I said I missed feeling close to him without feeling grossed out. He stared at me, silent for a long time, and then said, "So you'd rather I poison my scalp than accept me for who I am?" That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't about acceptance. It was about basic hygiene, about compromise, about not making your partner uncomfortable in their own skin, or bed. I said, "I accept you. I just don't want to smell you before you walk into the room." He didn't take that well, we argued. He said I'd changed, that I'd become judgmental. I told him I didn't sign up to date a walking biology experiment. That was 2 months ago. We decided to take a break. I thought he'd come around. Maybe realize that personal care doesn't make you less authentic. But I saw him last week at a mutual friend's barbecue, and, if anything, it's worse. His hair looked like it had fused into one continuous strand. The smell was faint but unmistakable even outdoors. He seemed happy though. Genuinely meanwhile, I've gone through phases of guilt and relief. Guilt, because part of me wonders if I gave up too soon. Relief, because my apartment finally smells like air again. I still miss him sometimes, the way he used to make me laugh. How curious he was about everything. But when I remember those last few months, the way I'd cringe when he got too close, I know staying would have killed the attraction completely. I don't think I'll ever understand how someone so smart and passionate could be so stubborn about something so simple. But maybe that's just who Marcus is. Someone who'd rather let his scalp rebalance than admit maybe, just maybe, shampoo isn't a conspiracy. And me? I'm learning that love shouldn't mean tolerating what makes you deeply uncomfortable just to prove you're open-minded. Sometimes self-respect smells like a clean head of hair. Update. It's been about 6 months since Marcus and I split. And honestly, I didn't think we'd ever talk again. We didn't have some big closure talk. It just fizzled out after that argument. He stopped texting me. I stopped checking his Instagram. I thought that was the end. Then last month, out of nowhere, he reached out. It started with a message that simply said, "Hey, I think I owe you an apology." I stared at it for a while before replying. We met up a few days later at a small cafe near campus. I was nervous, mostly because I didn't know what version of him I'd see. Would it be the natural lifestyle Marcus with the greasy hair and moral superiority complex? Or would it be the guy I fell in love with? The one who smelled like cedar soap and always wore that old denim jacket. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was clean, shiny, soft-looking, still a little wild, but in a good way. He'd trimmed his beard, and he looked healthy again. I think I just stared at him for a full 5 seconds before blurting out, "You washed your hair." He laughed. Kind of sheepishly. Yeah, I caved. Turns out, his no-poo journey didn't end the way he expected. After we broke up, he stuck with it for another couple of months. He said he was determined to prove me wrong. But according to him, the smell got so bad that even his coworkers started dropping hints. One day, his art studio manager apparently told him, "Dude, your aura smells like a compost bin." He tried rinsing it, brushing it out, even using vinegar rinses from online forums. Nothing helped. Eventually, he admitted defeat and bought a bottle of shampoo again. He said the first wash felt like a religious experience. We laughed for a while after that. It felt weirdly comfortable, like talking to someone familiar but different. Then he got quiet. "I was so sure I was right back then," he said. "I didn't realize I was making you miserable." I told him I wasn't perfect either, that I probably could have been gentler, or maybe communicated better. But he shook his head. "No, you tried. I just didn't want to hear it." I thought admitting you were right meant admitting I wasn't as enlightened as I pretended to be. That hit me, because that had always been Marcus's flaw. Not malice, but pride disguised as conviction. We talked for almost 3 hours that day, about life, art, the weird little things that had happened since we broke up. He'd started doing murals again, got a new apartment, and was planning to open an art workshop for kids. He seemed grounded. Before we left, he asked if I'd want to hang out again sometime. "Not in a romantic way," he said. "Just as friends," I agreed. We've seen each other a few times since then. Coffee, a local art show, even a walk through the farmer's market one Saturday morning. Each time I noticed how much calmer he seemed. There's still that spark in him, the curiosity, the passion. But now it's less about proving a point and more about just being himself. He told me he's been seeing a therapist too. He said he realized that his obsession with purity and natural living was tied to control issues. That he felt like if he could control everything he consumed or did, he could control how people saw him. "I think I was scared of not being special," he said one night, while we sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. "You made me feel normal, and I didn't know how to appreciate that back then." That line stayed with me. We haven't gotten back together, and honestly, I don't think we will. I care about him deeply, but I don't feel the same pull I used to. It's more like seeing someone you once loved finally grow into who they were supposed to be. And realizing that was the point all along. Funny enough, a few weeks ago, I started dating someone new. His name's Adam, he's kind, clean, funny, and most importantly, knows the value of shampoo. I told Marcus about him, and he smiled and said, "Good. You deserve someone who doesn't smell like fermented kale." We both laughed so hard I nearly spit out my coffee as we said goodbye that day. Marcus hugged me, and it hit me how different it felt. "No lingering smell, no awkwardness, just warmth," he whispered. Thanks for not giving up on me as a person, even if you gave up on us, I told him. You taught me that love isn't about fixing someone. It's about knowing when to let them figure it out. So yeah, my ex who once refused to wash his hair is now a walking Head and Shoulders commercial and a genuinely better man. And me? I'm finally at peace with how it all played out. Sometimes relationships don't end because of hate. They end because growth needs space, and sometimes that means growing apart first. Still, I'll admit one thing. Every time I catch a faint whiff of that clean, soapy scent when he hugs me goodbye, a small part of me smiles and thinks, thank God for shampoo. Final update. It's been almost a year since everything happened. Since the breakup, the awkward coffee meetups, and the whole shampoo redemption arc, as my best friend jokingly calls it. I wasn't planning on posting another update, but something happened last week that made me realize how far things have come. Marcus got married. Yeah, married. When the wedding invite came in the mail, I honestly froze. I didn't even know he was seeing someone seriously. I just sat there holding the envelope, staring at my name written in his messy, artsy handwriting. I had this wave of mixed emotions: surprise, nostalgia, and if I'm honest, a pinch of sadness. Not the kind of sadness that makes you want someone back, but the kind that makes you realize a chapter has truly closed. The wedding was small and intimate, an outdoor ceremony in a botanical garden. I almost didn't go, but something in me said I should. Closure isn't always about walking away sometimes. It's about witnessing how life keeps going. When I saw him at the altar, I actually laughed quietly to myself. His hair was perfectly clean, pulled back into a low bun. Not a single grease strand in sight. His suit was crisp, his eyes bright. And the woman beside him, Lila, radiated peace. She's a musician, apparently. She looked grounded, confident, and warm. I could tell, just from watching them, that he'd found someone who matched his new rhythm. After the ceremony, during the reception, Marcus saw me and immediately came over. He hugged me like an old friend, not like someone haunted by what-ifs. You came, he said, smiling. I did, I replied. I wasn't going to miss this. You look happy, he laughed softly. I am. And clean. We both cracked up like no time had passed at all. He introduced me to Lila, who was lovely. She thanked me, which threw me off at first. But then she said, Marcus told me you were the one who helped him see himself clearly. He said you were the mirror he didn't know he needed. That nearly made me tear up. Later that night, while the music played and people danced under string lights, Marcus and I sat for a moment off to the side. It felt right to talk. Not as exes, not as unfinished business, but as two people who once mattered deeply to each other. I used to think love was supposed to fix me, he said. But it wasn't. You just held up the truth. And I ran from it, Leela. She caught me after I learned how to stop running. I told him I was proud of him. Genuinely. He'd grown in ways I never imagined back then. He said he was proud of me, too. He'd seen some of my art online and said, You've got your own light now? It's good to see. And that was the moment I realized something. Love doesn't always die. Sometimes it just transforms. It becomes gratitude, mutual respect, a quiet thank you for surviving the mess together. When I left the wedding, I didn't cry. I thought I might, but instead I just smiled the whole drive home. It felt like everything had come full circle. Life since then has been gentle. I'm still with Adam, and things are steady, kind, uncomplicated in the best way. We've talked about moving in together soon. Sometimes he teases me about having an ex who started a hair cult, and I laugh because, honestly, he's not wrong. Every once in a while, Marcus and I text. Nothing deep, just updates. A photo of his new mural, or me sending him a funny meme about hippies and shampoo. There's a comfort in that, knowing that even after everything, we managed to keep something good. I guess the moral of all this is that people really can change. Not because someone forces them to, but because life eventually humbles them enough to listen. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to see that change happen from a distance and feel peace instead of pain. So yeah, my ex who refused to wash his hair found love, found balance and found soap, and I found closure, peace, and someone who doesn't need fixing to feel like home. If you told me 2 years ago that this story, the one that started with greasy hair and stubborn pride, would end with laughter at a wedding under twinkle lights, I wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. Life's funny like that. Sometimes the messiest chapters end up being the ones that make you the cleanest inside. Stories number 5. They're losing their house and want to move in with me. But I can't do it. I 33F feel sick with guilt right now. But I don't know what else to do. Last week, my mom called me crying. It wasn't the kind of quiet, sniffly crying she does when she's stressed. It was full-on, can't catch her breath sobbing. My parents are losing their house, the one I grew up in. The one where the front porch still has the chipped paint I helped my dad put up when I was 10. The mortgage is too far behind, and the bank has given them their final notice. They have about 6 weeks before they're officially out, and they want to move in with me. My parents, Debbie and Mark, are both in their late 50s. They're not old, not disabled, not incapable of working, but they've made some very bad choices over the years, especially financially. My dad has this habit of chasing big ideas, flipping old cars, buying broken appliances to refurbish and sell, signing up for can't-miss investment programs that are just MLMs with extra steps. My mom enables it because she hates confrontation and always hopes this one will work out. It never does. For context, I bought my own house 3 years ago in Cincinnati. I worked my ass off for it. It's a modest 3-bedroom with a yard, but it's mine. I've got a steady job as a dental hygienist, a boyfriend, Eli, I've been with for 2 years, and a dog named Ranger. Life finally feels stable, like I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. Then my parents dropped this bombshell. They said they could move into my guest room, just for a few months, while they figure things out. My mom promised they'd help with bills and groceries. But I've heard that before. When I was 19 and living at home during college, my dad borrowed my student loan refund because he needed it for truck repairs. When I got my first real job, he guilted me into co-signing a credit card just for emergencies. That turned into years of collection calls. So when my mom said, "You're the only one we can turn to," I just froze. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to be the good daughter. But all I could picture was the chaos coming back. Unpaid bills, clutter everywhere. My dad drinking beer in the garage all day while my mom made excuses. I told them I'd think about it. Eli and I talked that night, and he was incredibly patient, but I could see the panic in his face. He said, "Babe, I get that you love them, but you know what happens when they move in. It won't be a few months, it'll be forever." He's right. They'd never leave, so after a few days of thinking, I called them and said no. I offered to help pay for a rental deposit somewhere cheaper, maybe a small apartment or trailer. I told them I could help with budgeting, finding resources, even paying the moving truck, but I couldn't have them move in. My mom went silent for a full 10 seconds before she whispered, "Wow, I didn't realize we raised someone so selfish." Then she hung up. My dad texted me later saying he didn't expect me to turn my back on family, and that I'd regret it when they're living in their car. That message broke something in me. I cried the whole night. The next morning, my older brother Jason, who lives in Florida, called to tell me Mom had called him sobbing, saying I abandoned them. Jason asked why I couldn't just let them stay for a bit, but he's not offering because his wife can't stand them. He knows exactly what they're like. He's just trying to keep the guilt off himself. The rest of the week has been awful. My mom's barely replying to my texts, and when she does, it's passive-aggressive things like, "Hope you and Eli are comfortable in your big house while we figure out where to sleep." I feel guilty, but also angry, because I worked so hard to build a safe, calm life for myself. I finally broke free from their dysfunction, and now they're trying to drag me back into it. I keep thinking about all the times I bailed them out before. The Christmases where my presents were, "We'll pay you back soon." The times they showed up unannounced at my apartment when I was in college because their power got shut off. The way they made me feel like it was my responsibility to keep their lives together. I just can't go through that again, and yet, every time I sit in my house, I feel this heavy shame. Like maybe I really am a terrible daughter. I've been avoiding their calls for days now. I told Eli that if they show up unannounced, I'll have to stand firm, even if it kills me inside, but I know my mom, she'll show up eventually, crying and begging, and I'll have to physically tell her she can't come in. I don't even know how to prepare for that moment. It's such a weird mix of emotions, guilt, fear, exhaustion, and this tiny sliver of defiance that I didn't even know I had. Like maybe this is what breaking the cycle looks like. And it just feels terrible at first. Still, I can't sleep. Every creak in the house makes me think it's them pulling up in their van. I wish I didn't love them so much. Update. It's been 3 weeks since I posted, and everything I was afraid of pretty much happened, though not exactly the way I expected. After I wrote the first post, I tried to reach out to my mom again. I texted her something simple. "Hey Mom, I just want you to know I still love you, and I'm trying to help in ways that won't destroy us both. Please don't hate me." She didn't respond. For a few days, it was dead silent. I tried calling twice, straight to voicemail. I even called my dad's phone, but he didn't pick up either. Then, one Thursday night after work, I pulled into my driveway and saw their minivan parked right in front of my house. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I'd throw up. I walked up slowly, hoping maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it was just a similar car. But then my mom stepped out of the driver's seat wearing her old hoodie, the one that says Ohio State Mom, her eyes red and puffy. My dad was sitting on the curb smoking, arms crossed before I could even open my mouth. She said, "We had nowhere else to go, Katie." I froze. They weren't yelling or threatening. They looked defeated, and that somehow made it worse. I told them they couldn't just show up like that. I reminded them that I had offered money to help them find a place. My mom started crying again, and my dad said, "You can keep your damn money. We're not your charity case." Eli came outside because he heard the noise, and the second my dad saw him, he glared. "You letting her treat her family like this?" he asked. Eli kept calm, which I'll forever be grateful for, and said, "Sir, you need to leave. You're not being kicked out on the street. You've been offered help. But showing up uninvited, isn't it?" My dad muttered something under his breath like, "This guy's got her brainwashed," and my mom just stood there crying quietly. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, standing on my own front lawn, telling the people who raised me that they couldn't come inside. I told them I'd book them a motel for a few nights while we figured out a longer-term option. My mom didn't even look at me when she said, "Don't bother." They got back in the van and drove off. I just stood there watching their taillights disappear, shaking. I didn't even realize I was crying until Eli pulled me into a hug. He said softly, "You did the right thing. You've done enough, but it didn't feel right." The next day, I called my brother Jason in Florida. He said they had called him too, apparently asking for money for gas and a place to crash if they could drive down there. He told me he offered to cover their gas if they went to an extended stay motel near us instead. They refused, saying the families turned on us. That phrase, "the families turned on us," broke my heart, because that's how they always frame it. Whenever they face the consequences of their actions, they rewrite it into a tragedy where they're the victims. The following week was quiet. No calls, no texts. I started to think maybe they found somewhere. I even let myself relax a little, but last Friday my mom called. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She said, "We found a room at a weekly rate place near Dayton. It's small, but we'll manage. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. Peace and quiet." I didn't know what to say. I told her I wasn't happy about any of this, and she sighed. "Then why couldn't you just help your parents for once without conditions?" I said, "Because your help always comes with conditions too. Emotional ones. I can't live like that anymore." She went silent again. Then she said, "I guess we'll talk when you remember what family means," and hung up. I just sat there at my kitchen table for a long time after that. The next morning, Eli found me scrolling through old pictures. Birthdays, holidays, camping trips. I told him I felt like the worst person alive, that I'd broken some unspoken rule about what daughters are supposed to do. He said something I've been replaying ever since. "You didn't break the rule, Katie. You broke the pattern. That's why it hurts." He's right, it's been quiet since. I sent my mom a text last night, just to check they're okay. But no response yet. I'm trying to accept that maybe that's how it'll be for a while. Maybe even forever. Part of me still wants to drive to Dayton and check on them. But another part of me, the part that remembers every time I bailed them out and ended up worse for it, keeps saying, "Don't do it. Don't reopen the wound you just started to heal." I don't know where this goes from here, but I do know this. The guilt doesn't go away overnight. It just gets quieter, like a radio fading into static. And somewhere in that static there's this small voice saying, "You're allowed to protect yourself." For the first time in my life, I'm trying to listen to that voice. Final update. It's been almost 7 months since that night they showed up in front of my house. It feels like both yesterday and a lifetime ago. I wanted to wait until things settled before posting again. Because honestly, I didn't know how to put into words what the past few months have felt like. After my last update, my parents kept that low-level contact pattern. A few passive-aggressive texts here and there, mostly from my mom, nothing from my dad for a long while. Then, around Christmas, I got a voicemail from him. He sounded small. He said, "Hey kiddo, just wanted to say Merry Christmas. We're all right." I didn't know if I should call back. Eli and I spent Christmas with his family that year. Warm, calm, full of laughter and absolutely zero tension. I remember sitting in his parents' living room, watching his niece open presents, and realizing that this piece was what I'd been missing my entire life. That night, after we got home, I called my dad back. He sounded surprised I called, and for a few seconds neither of us knew what to say. Then he asked how I'd been, how work was, and if the kids were doing okay. His voice cracked a little when I told him we were all fine. Then he said, "Your mom misses you," and there it was. The line that always comes right before the guilt train. But this time, I didn't take the bait. I said, "Dad, I miss her too, but she made choices, and I can't fix what she won't even admit was broken." He sighed, and there was this long pause. Then he said, "She's angry because she thinks you stopped caring," I told him. I stopped trying to prove it in ways that hurt me. We talked for about 20 minutes, longer than any conversation I've had with him in years. When we hung up, I felt, not closure exactly, but a kind of quiet acceptance, like we both finally understood the limits of what the other could give. Over the next few months, my mom would text occasionally, usually something like, "Hope you're well," followed by some dig about how expensive her medication was or how nobody helps family anymore. I stopped taking the bait. I'd reply kindly, briefly, and without opening the door too wide. Then something unexpected happened. In early March, she texted me saying, "We're moving in with Aunt Linda for a while. Your dad got a part-time maintenance job at her complex." I almost didn't believe it. My dad hadn't held steady work in years, but apparently, Aunt Linda, who I haven't talked to in forever, either convinced him to help out around her building, fixing doors, doing small repairs, and in exchange, they could stay in one of the empty units. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. For the first time, they were making it work without leaning on me. And that was the moment something shifted inside me. I didn't feel guilty anymore. I realized that every time I'd rescued them, I'd actually been preventing this. Them figuring out how to stand on their own. It took them hitting rock bottom for it to happen. And it took me stepping back for them to get there. In May, my mom called. Her tone was different, not angry, not manipulative, just tired, she said. "I think I owe you an apology." I didn't say anything. I just listened. She told me she'd been angry because she thought my distance meant rejection, not self-preservation. She said Aunt Linda had been setting her straight, explaining that my boundaries weren't cruelty. They were self-respect. I actually laughed a little, because I'd been trying to say that for years. We talked for an hour, about small things. Her garden, my daughter's new obsession with softball, the weather. She didn't bring up money or housing or guilt. It was the most normal conversation we'd had since I was a teenager. Since then, things have slowly, and I mean slowly, gotten better. We talk maybe once a week now. Sometimes my dad joins in. They still have their moments, still try to push a little too far sometimes. But I've learned how to end those conversations without the crushing guilt afterward. Last week, for the first time in almost 2 years, my parents came to visit. They didn't stay with us. They got a motel nearby. My mom brought a little handmade birdhouse from my backyard, and my dad fixed the loose step on our porch without me even asking. We had dinner, talked, laughed, and when it was time for them to leave, my mom hugged me and said, "Thank you for giving us space to figure things out." And I realized that's what this whole journey had been about. Not cutting them off forever, but creating the space for them to actually grow. It's not perfect. It never will be. But for the first time in my adult life, I feel like our relationship has a chance to exist without breaking me in the process. Eli told me later that night, "You didn't abandon them. You just stopped drowning to keep them afloat." That line stuck with me, because it sums everything up, so yeah. To anyone reading this who's in a similar spot, who feels like the worst person alive for saying no to family, I promise you, setting boundaries isn't betrayal. Sometimes it's the first step toward real healing, and if you're lucky, one day, you'll wake up and realize the silence that once felt unbearable has turned into peace, and that peace, it's worth everything. Stories number 6. Bought my niece a car and now my family thinks I'm playing favorites. I 42F have always been close to my sister, Amanda. We grew up in a single-parent home after our dad passed when we were young, and we learned to rely on each other. She had 2 kids, Emily, who's 18 now, and Josh, who's 16. I don't have kids myself, so I've always treated them like my own. Birthdays, holidays, random treats. I've always loved being the cool aunt. A few months ago, Emily graduated high school with honors. She's been working part-time at a grocery store, saving every penny for college. She's responsible, kind, and has this calm maturity about her. She's always been the one to take care of everyone else. Josh, on the other hand, is your typical teenage boy. He's smart, but doesn't care much for school. Loves video games and tends to be a little entitled. He's not a bad kid, just immature and used to being bailed out. Anyway, the situation started when Emily got accepted to a college about 30 minutes away from home. Public transportation in their town is unreliable, and Amanda couldn't afford to buy her a car. Emily was planning to use her savings for a cheap used one, but that would have wiped out everything she had set aside for books and expenses. I wanted to help. I'd been saving for a while and figured I could afford to buy her something decent. A used 2016 Honda Civic in good condition. It wasn't flashy, just reliable and safe. I paid for it outright, got it registered in Emily's name, and surprised her at her graduation party. She cried. Amanda cried. I cried. It was one of those moments that just felt right. Emily was genuinely grateful and promised to take care of it. Everyone at the party seemed happy, until Josh overheard someone mention that it was Emily's car, not the family's car. He threw a fit. He yelled that it wasn't fair, that now he'd look poor when his sister had a car and he didn't. Amanda tried to calm him down, but he stormed off, muttering something about me playing favorites that night. Amanda called me and said Josh was refusing to speak to her or Emily. I told her I'd talk to him, thinking I could smooth things over. When I went to their house the next day, Josh wouldn't even look at me. I tried explaining that Emily needed the car for school and work, and that maybe when he was older and working towards something similar, I could help him too. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "So I have to be perfect like her to deserve anything from you?" That hit hard. I told him that wasn't it, that I loved him too, but that I wasn't going to reward bad behavior or laziness. He didn't say another word. A week later, Amanda called again. Apparently Josh had gone to stay with their dad for a bit. Amanda and her ex, Scott, have been divorced for years. Scott then called me furious, saying I was trying to turn his kids against each other and that a car is something both kids should have an equal shot at. I told him I wasn't obligated to buy anyone anything, and that Emily had earned this through her effort and responsibility. He told me I was just trying to make him look bad because he couldn't afford something like that. Since then, it's been tense. Emily loves her car and is thriving. She started her first semester, and she's doing great. But Josh has barely spoken to me. Amanda tries to keep the peace, but I can tell she's uncomfortable too. She told me she appreciates what I did for Emily, but maybe I should have waited or done it more privately to avoid this mess. I don't regret buying the car, but I hate that it caused so much drama. My mom even chimed in recently, saying I should have seen this coming, and that you can't do something big for one kid without doing it for the other. I get where they're coming from, but I don't see it that way. Emily is an adult now, moving forward in her life, and she's shown real responsibility. Josh is still figuring himself out. I don't want to teach him that he gets something just because someone else did. That's not how the world works, still. I can't lie, it's been bothering me. Every time I go over to visit, Josh avoids me. He won't sit at the dinner table if I'm there. Emily looks guilty whenever she uses her car, and Amanda just looks exhausted from trying to keep the peace. I've tried reaching out to Josh again, texting him, even offering to help him find a part-time job if he wants to start saving for his own car. He never replies. Last week, Amanda told me to give him space, but I'm afraid this might have permanently damaged my relationship with him. It's so strange to me how one act of kindness could turn into such a source of resentment. I didn't expect gratitude, but I didn't expect this either. Now I keep wondering if I should have just given Emily money toward tuition, or books instead. Maybe that would have been more discreet and less of a flashpoint. Still, deep down, I know I didn't do anything wrong. I helped someone who needed it. I acted out of love, not favoritism. I just wish the rest of my family saw it that way too. It's been about 4 months since the whole car situation blew up, and I honestly thought things would have cooled off by now, but they haven't. If anything, the tension has just changed shape. It's not as explosive anymore, but it's colder. Quiet resentment kind of sits in the background of every family get-together. After that first wave of drama, I decided to step back for a bit. I didn't want to make Amanda's life harder. I love her, and I know she's stuck in the middle. But it's tough because I also feel like I'm being treated like the bad guy for something that wasn't malicious. Emily still texts and calls me almost every week. She updates me on school, her classes, her new friends, and how much easier life has been with the car. She got a part-time job on campus, and she's balancing it all like a champ. She even drove down one weekend to surprise me and help me clean out my garage. She told me again how much that car changed her life, she said. I don't think I'd be doing as well right now if I didn't have that independence. Hearing that meant a lot. But here's where things got more complicated. A few weeks ago, Amanda asked if I could come over to help her with some house repairs. I showed up on a Sunday morning, and Josh was there. He's grown taller since the summer, and his voice is deeper, but his attitude? Still frosty. He barely said hi while Amanda and I were fixing a leaky faucet. She told me that Josh had gotten his learner's permit. Apparently, his dad, Scott, had promised to buy him a car as soon as he passes his driving test. I asked if she thought Scott could actually afford that, and she gave me a look that said, absolutely not. But she also said she didn't want to get in the middle of that promise. Later that afternoon, I went out to grab something from my car, and I saw Josh sitting on the porch scrolling through his phone. I figured, okay, maybe I'll try again. So I sat down next to him and asked how he's been doing. He shrugged, didn't look up, and said, fine. I tried to make small talk. I told him Emily had come by recently, and that she said college was going great. He muttered, yeah, must be nice. That stung, but I stayed calm. I told him I understood why he felt it was unfair, but that it wasn't about picking favorites. I said I wanted to see him succeed too, and that when he starts planning for his future, college, trade school, whatever, I'd be happy to help him in his own way. He just looked at me and said, so I have to earn your love? That one hit like a punch. I said, no, you already have my love, Josh. You always have. But I'm not going to buy things to prove it. Helping Emily was about opportunity, not comparison. He didn't say anything else. He just went inside. That night, Amanda texted me to say he'd told her I made him feel small. That one really broke my heart. I wasn't trying to guilt him, but I think he's just not mature enough yet to separate fairness from equality. A couple weeks later, my mom decided to hold an early Thanksgiving dinner so everyone could be together before Emily's finals. I debated not going, but Amanda begged me to come. She said things were better now. Spoiler. They were not. Dinner started fine. Emily hugged me the second I walked in, and Amanda seemed genuinely happy to see me. Josh, though, stayed glued to his phone. Everything was fine until my mom, who always means well but has no filter, made a comment like, Emily, that car of yours sure was a blessing. You're lucky your aunt knows how to take care of her favorite girl. I swear, the air froze. Emily looked mortified. Amanda closed her eyes, and Josh stood up and said, yeah, we already know who the favorite is. Then he walked out. Amanda ran after him, but he drove off with Scott, who was also at dinner and apparently had been drinking a little. He didn't say anything to me directly, but he smirked like he was enjoying the chaos. After they left, my mom apologized, saying she didn't mean it that way. But the damage was done. Emily was crying, and I felt like absolute garbage. That night, Amanda texted me again. She said Josh came home later and told her he doesn't want me around anymore. He said every time I show up, it's a reminder that he's not enough. She said she didn't agree, but she also didn't want to push him. So now I've pulled back even more. I still talk to Emily regularly, but I haven't gone over to Amanda's house since Thanksgiving. I didn't even go for Christmas because Amanda said Josh needed space. I thought about sending him a Christmas gift anyway. Maybe something small, like a new controller for his gaming console, but I decided against it. I didn't want it to come off as a bribe or make things worse. It's been quiet since then. No arguments, no drama, but also no connection. Emily keeps trying to mediate, saying he'll come around eventually. She said he told her once that he gets it, but can't help being mad. She thinks he feels embarrassed that he made such a big deal out of it and doesn't know how to apologize. Maybe she's right, I really hope so, because despite everything, I still care about him deeply. I'd give anything for us to go back to how it used to be. Movie nights, board games, him asking me for advice on school stuff. I miss that kid. Sometimes I replay everything in my head and wonder if I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have given Emily money quietly, or said it was a graduation loan, or something less direct. But I also think, what kind of message would that send? That doing well should be hidden just to keep others comfortable? That helping someone means you owe equal help to everyone else, regardless of circumstance? I don't know. Maybe that's what family does. Twists love into something complicated without meaning to. Still, I'm holding out hope. He's a teenager. Teenagers say things they don't mean. They feel things deeply and hold grudges hard. But they also grow, and when he does, I'll be here. Not with another car, not with money, but with open arms. Ready to start over? It's been almost a full year now, and I finally feel like I can talk about what happened without feeling that pit in my stomach. Things have slowly started to settle between all of us. Though it's been a long and uneven road, after the Thanksgiving blow-up, I didn't see much of Josh or Amanda for a while. Emily came home for winter break, and she stayed with me instead of her mom's. We spent Christmas quietly, just the two of us, making lasagna and watching old movies. She brought small gifts for everyone, even Josh, which I thought was really sweet. It was a hoodie from his favorite basketball team, and she asked if I'd mind delivering it since she didn't want things to be awkward. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. When I showed up at Amanda's house a few days after Christmas, it felt strange. The last time I'd been there, everything had fallen apart, but Amanda greeted me warmly, hugged me, and said she was glad I came. Josh was in his room, and I wasn't sure if he'd want to see me, so I just left the wrapped gift on the kitchen table and told Amanda to give it to him. About a week later, I got a text. It was short. "Thanks for the hoodie. Emily told me it was from you both." It's cool, that was it, but honestly, it felt like a start. A couple months passed, and I didn't want to push things. I checked in with Amanda occasionally, mostly to see how she was doing. She told me Josh had been taking some community college classes through a high school program, and was starting to think seriously about mechanical engineering. That made me smile. He'd always been the kind of kid who could take things apart and put them back together better than they were before. Around spring, Emily called and told me she'd convinced Josh to join her for lunch when she came home for a long weekend. She said she'd already warned him that I'd be there too, and surprisingly, he didn't object. We met at this little diner downtown, and I was nervous as hell walking in. When I got there, Josh was sitting across from Emily, sipping a milkshake like nothing had ever happened. He looked older somehow, not just physically but in his face, like life had been teaching him some hard lessons. He didn't hug me or anything, but he smiled, which was something. We talked about cars, college, and random stuff. At one point, he even laughed when I teased him about his messy hair. Then, halfway through lunch, he said, "I know I was a jerk. I just didn't get it then. I thought you didn't care about me." I could have cried right there in that booth. Instead, I told him the truth, that I always cared, and still do, but I wanted to teach him that love isn't measured in money or things. It's shown through consistency, support, and being there when it matters. He nodded and said, "Yeah, I get that now." We didn't dwell on it too long, but that was all I needed. That moment of understanding. After that, things started to thaw for real. I started stopping by Amanda's place again. Not as often as before, but enough that it felt normal. Josh even helped me replace my car's brake pads one weekend. We didn't talk about the drama. We just worked. Listened to music and ordered pizza after. It felt easy. Meanwhile, Emily is thriving. She just finished her second year of college, still driving that same car, and she's already planning to intern with an environmental agency next summer. She told me she's been saving up to help Josh buy his own used car when he graduates high school next year. That girl's got a heart of gold. Amanda and I had a long conversation a few weeks ago. Too, she apologized for not handling things better, and I apologized for not anticipating how deep the resentment would run. She said, "We all did our best with what we had," and I think she's right. There's one more thing that hit me recently. My dad passed away this summer, and the family came together for the funeral. Josh came up to me during the reception, gave me a hug and said, "I'm sorry about Grandpa. He always talked about how proud he was of you." Then he added, "Thanks for not giving up on me." That was the moment I realized it was really over. The distance, the bitterness, all of it, family's messy, there's no perfect way to do it. You think you're doing something kind, and it spirals into resentment. You think you've lost someone forever, and then one small moment starts to repair everything. It's slow, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. Now we've started a new tradition. Once a month, the four of us, me, Amanda, Emily, and Josh, meet for dinner. No gifts, no expectations, just time together. And last month Josh drove in his own car. He bought it with money from a summer job, and he's proud of it. It's not fancy. It's a beat-up old Honda. But he keeps it clean and even jokes that it's Aunt Rachel approved. I smiled when he said that, because it finally felt like we were back to being a family. Not perfect, but whole again. And maybe that's all any of us can really hope for. Stories number 7. The wedding guest who wouldn't stop flirting with my fiancé. When people say weddings bring out the worst in some, I used to think they meant the drunk uncle or the cousin who tries to make a toast about themselves. I never imagined it would be a friend of the groom. A woman who made it her personal mission to test how chill I could be before I snapped in front of 200 guests. It started months before the wedding, my fiancé, Ryan, and I had been together for 6 years, engaged for 1. We'd met back in college. He was studying engineering, and I was majoring in communications. Ryan's one of those effortlessly kind, magnetic people everyone seems drawn to. And I don't say that out of jealousy. It's just who he is. He could talk to a stranger in a grocery store and walk out with their life story. That's probably what drew her in too. Her name was Savannah. She was Ryan's coworker at his firm, a marketing consultant who worked with his team on some joint projects. I'd met her briefly once at a company dinner. She was one of those women who radiate confidence. Tall, blonde, perfect posture, the kind of person who somehow makes drinking water look seductive. At first, I thought she was harmless. She was friendly, a bit too touchy maybe, but I brushed it off. Ryan had a lot of female coworkers, and I trusted him completely. But as the wedding got closer, Savannah's behavior shifted from friendly to what the actual hell. It began with small things. When we sent out invitations, she texted me, not Ryan, saying, "Can't wait to see how handsome Ryan looks in his tux. I might need to borrow him for a dance." I laughed it off and sent a polite reply. Something like, "Sure, but I might have to cut in." Her response? "We'll see who wins." I showed Ryan, and he groaned, rolling his eyes. "Savannah flirts with everyone," he said. "It's just her personality. Don't let it get to you." I didn't want to be that fiancé, the controlling, jealous one, so I let it go. But things escalated quickly once the wedding week started. The night before the rehearsal dinner, she posted on Instagram a photo of her trying on different dresses with the caption, "Which one says wedding guest or secret lover?" And the comments were filled with her friends laughing. But I noticed Ryan had been tagged in one of them. I texted him, "Are you seeing this?" He replied, "Yeah, I'll handle it." The next day, at the rehearsal, Savannah arrived in a white satin dress. I wish I was exaggerating. Not ivory, not champagne. White, full length, slit up the side. Like she was auditioning to be me when she walked in. Everyone went quiet for a second. Even my bridesmaids exchanged looks. I tried to keep it together, plastering on a polite smile. Ryan pulled her aside almost immediately. I didn't hear what he said, but Savannah's expression shifted from smug to pouty in seconds. She sulked the rest of the night, occasionally shooting me dagger looks like I had embarrassed her. I figured that would be the end of it, surely. She'd tone it down after being confronted. Oh, how wrong I was. The actual wedding day was beautiful. Everything went perfectly. The weather, the ceremony, the music. My mom cried. Ryan's dad gave the sweetest speech. And for a moment, I forgot all about Savannah. Until the reception, she showed up late. Wearing a tight red dress that looked one deep breath away from disaster, she waltzed straight up to Ryan, hugged him for way too long, and whispered something in his ear. He gently stepped back, clearly uncomfortable, but I could tell he was trying to stay polite. Throughout the evening, she kept finding excuses to talk to him. When we were taking photos, she tried to sneak into a few. When we had our first dance, I swear she filmed it like a documentary, zooming in on Ryan the entire time, but the breaking point came during the bouquet toss. Savannah, already tipsy, shouted loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "If I catch it, does that mean Ryan's next?" The crowd laughed awkwardly, but I could feel the blood drain from my face. I saw Ryan's expression harden. He looked done after that. He asked one of his groomsmen to escort her outside for some air. Apparently she caused a scene out there too, crying, saying how she'd always felt a connection to him, and that he was making a mistake. The groomsman, Chris, later told me she tried to kiss Ryan when he went to check if she was okay. He didn't tell me that night, not wanting to ruin our evening. But I found out the next morning. Ryan came clean immediately, apologizing for not telling me sooner. "I just didn't want to destroy the night," he said. "I thought we could deal with it later." And we did. Ryan reported her behavior to HR the next week. Turns out, it wasn't the first time she'd crossed lines at work. She ended up being quietly let go a few weeks later. I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't feel satisfied. But more than anything, I just felt relieved. Relieved that I wasn't crazy, that the red flags weren't just in my head. People sometimes ask me if I regret inviting her. Honestly, no. I learned a lot from that experience, mostly about boundaries and how people will test them if you don't enforce them. I also learned that trust isn't about pretending you're not hurt. It's about being honest enough to face uncomfortable truths together. Ryan and I are 2 years married now. He's still working at the same firm, now as a senior engineer. We laugh about it sometimes, the wedding guest from hell story. But deep down, I know it was one of those early tests that showed who we were as a couple. And Savannah? The last I heard, she moved to Seattle, started her own branding consultancy. Her Instagram is all vague captions about manifesting your desires. Maybe she's changed, maybe not, but she's out of our lives, and that's enough for me. Sometimes I think back to that night, to her slurring that line about catching the bouquet. And I can't help but smirk, because no matter how hard she tried to make herself the main character, she never understood something simple. She wasn't the story, we were. It's been about 8 months since our wedding, and I didn't really plan to post an update because I thought the whole Savannah situation was dead and buried. But recently, something happened that stirred everything back up. And honestly, I'm still processing it, so as I mentioned, Ryan and I settled into married life pretty well. We bought a small townhouse just outside of Cincinnati. Nothing huge, but perfect for the two of us. He kept his job at the firm, and I started freelancing full-time as a copywriter, which has been both terrifying and freeing. Life was finally starting to feel calm again until 2 weeks ago. Ryan came home from work one evening looking pale. Not sick. More like the something weird happened kind of pale. He dropped his briefcase, sat down and said, "You're not going to believe this." Apparently, Savannah had applied for a contract position at the same company again. Not in his department, but under a different branch of marketing that sometimes collaborates with his division. HR recognized her name and flagged it immediately. But here's where it got creepy. She listed Ryan as a reference. A reference. When HR called to verify, Ryan was caught totally off guard, the HR manager said. "We just wanted to confirm that Savannah worked closely with you, and that you'd recommend her." He told them flat out that she was not someone he would recommend, and briefly explained what had happened before. The inappropriate comments, the behavior at our wedding, and her dismissal. The HR rep thanked him and said they'd handle it, but Ryan was visibly shaken up after. I could tell he was trying to downplay it, saying, "She probably just didn't think they'd check." But I could see the unease in his eyes. We didn't hear anything else for about a week. Then I got an Instagram DM. It was from a new account with no profile photo. Just the username iSunshineAgain32, the message said. "You shouldn't have let him lie about me. You know he wanted me first." I froze. Ryan immediately reported it. And within a few hours, the account was deleted. But the damage was done. That pit in my stomach returned, the one I thought I'd buried. It's that horrible mix of anger and fear. Like you're being watched by someone who thinks you're the villain in their story. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How did she even find me again? Did she still think she had a shot after all this time? I knew she'd always been delusional. But this was a new level of unsettling. Then, last Friday, something even stranger happened. I was out running errands when I stopped by a local cafe. As I was waiting for my drink, someone brushed past me and whispered, "Tell Ryan I said hi." I turned, but whoever it was had already slipped out the door. I stood there frozen for a good minute. It could have been anyone. Maybe I imagined it, but my gut told me otherwise. That night, I told Ryan everything. He was furious. Not at me, but at the situation. He contacted the company again and informed HR about the messages and the encounter. They said they were already aware of Savannah trying to reapply under different aliases. Apparently, Savannah Brooks had become Anna Brooks in her new application. HR assured us they were taking it seriously. Still, the whole thing left me on edge. I started noticing little things around our house. A car parked outside for hours that I didn't recognize. A random email subscription under my name for some lifestyle newsletter I'd never signed up for. It might all be coincidence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't really let go. Ryan tried to comfort me, saying we shouldn't give her power by assuming she's lurking. And maybe he's right. But I've started documenting everything just in case. Screenshots, timestamps, anything unusual. I even installed a security camera by the front door. You know, I used to feel sorry for her. I genuinely did. I thought maybe she was just lonely or insecure, but after this, I don't think so. I think some people convince themselves they're entitled to someone else's story, that they can rewrite it if they just push hard enough. Ryan's been amazing through all of it. He's protective without being overbearing, and he's made it clear to everyone at work that he won't tolerate any form of her interference again. HR actually added a formal note to her file to prevent her from being rehired under any circumstance. But the weirdest part? Last night, Ryan showed me something that almost made me laugh from disbelief. Savannah had posted a long rant on LinkedIn of all places, something about toxic workplaces and people trying to destroy your reputation because they couldn't handle your confidence. She didn't name names, of course, but the timing was obvious. I realized then that she wasn't trying to win Ryan anymore. She just wanted to stay relevant, to keep herself in the story somehow, because once we fully moved on, she'd lose the only thing that made her feel powerful, our attention. So here's what I've decided. I'm done feeding that energy. If she messages again, I'll report it. If she tries anything else, it's straight to legal channels. But emotionally, she's cut off. I refuse to let her live rent-free in my head. Ryan and I have started therapy together. Not because we're struggling, but because we both want to protect what we've built. I don't want this bizarre chapter to define us. And in a weird way, I think it's strengthened us even more. We're talking about starting a family next year. Something we both feel ready for now. I never thought I'd be grateful for someone like Savannah entering our lives. But she did teach me one valuable thing. People will always try to test the boundaries of your peace. It's your job to decide who gets to cross them. And from now on, no one like her ever will again. It's been almost 2 years since I last posted, and reading back on those old words feels like opening a chapter from someone else's life. I'm calmer now, grounded. Happier than I ever thought I'd be after that whirlwind. But I also promised myself that when things finally came full circle, I'd post one last update, to close the book for good. After everything with Savannah, the messages, the creepy encounter, the HR mess, things finally settled for a while. We focused on healing and reclaiming a sense of normalcy. Ryan changed departments a few months later. It wasn't a career move he planned, but when a managerial position opened up in a different branch, he jumped at it. Fresh start, new environment. And most importantly, no ties to the past. I remember him telling me, I just want us to breathe again, and we did. That summer was peaceful. We spent weekends hiking, cooking, and laughing about how something as small as a borrowed hot sauce bottle had somehow spiraled into such chaos. For months, life felt normal again. No strange messages, no run-ins, no random cars outside our place. Then, out of nowhere, in early spring, I got an email. It was from a woman named Renee. A recruiter from another company who said she'd seen my freelance portfolio online. She wanted to schedule a call about a potential copywriting contract. It sounded completely legit. The email address looked professional, and she referenced projects I'd actually posted on my site. But during the call, something felt off. Her tone was strange, overly familiar. She kept steering the conversation toward my personal life, asking how I balanced work with a husband like Ryan, asking what our love story was. At one point, she even said, "You must have a lot of trust, especially after everything that happened." My blood ran cold. I hung up mid-call and immediately Googled the company name. It was real, but the recruiter's name wasn't on their website. I reached out to the company directly, and sure enough, they confirmed no one named Renee worked there. It wasn't hard to guess who was behind it. That night, Ryan and I sat on the couch in silence for what felt like an hour. I could see the exhaustion in his face. He looked like someone who wanted to scream but was too tired to bother. Finally, he said, "I think it's time we make this official." He meant legal action. We gathered everything, the old messages, the fake account, screenshots of the email, even the notes from HR. A close friend of ours connected us with a lawyer who specialized in harassment and cyberstalking. She was amazing, calm, composed, and brutally honest. She explained that even though Savannah hadn't made direct threats, the repeated, deceptive contact could absolutely qualify as harassment, especially considering the prior incidents. She drafted a cease and desist letter within a week. It was sent via certified mail to the address listed on Savannah's employment file from when she worked at Ryan's company, and then nothing. No response, no calls, no messages, just silence. It's been over a year since that letter was sent, and we haven't heard a single thing since. Ryan sometimes jokes that maybe she finally found someone else to obsess over. But I think the truth is simpler. She finally realized that she couldn't reach us anymore. Not legally, not emotionally, not mentally. The fear has faded. We even got a small dog, a golden retriever named Murphy, who somehow became our emotional therapy mascot. Ryan loves to say Murphy's presence chased the ghosts away. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I believe him. Life's not perfect, but it's peaceful. The kind of quiet you don't take for granted once you've lost it. Ryan and I celebrated our second anniversary last month. We invited a few close friends over for dinner. During dessert, someone jokingly asked if we had any crazy wedding stories. And Ryan and I just looked at each other and laughed. Not a bitter laugh, a real lighthearted one. Because it finally feels like just that. A story. Something that happened, not something that haunts. Sometimes I still think about Savannah, but not out of anger anymore. More out of curiosity, I guess. What makes a person cling so hard to someone else's life that they lose their own in the process? I don't think I'll ever know, but I do know this. Closure doesn't come when the other person apologizes or disappears. It comes when you finally stop caring about the outcome, when their name no longer spikes your heartbeat or poisons your peace. So if she ever reads this, somehow, some way, I hope she's found something else to pour her energy into. Because we've already moved on. We've built something she can't touch. And after everything, I think that's the real happy ending. Stories number 8. The day the playground war started. I never thought I'd be that person. The one in the neighborhood group chat everyone side-eyes. The one whispered about during HOA meetings. But here we are. Apparently, I'm the reason the kids can't play on the communal space. And I swear to God, that is not what I wanted. So, a little background. I 35F live in a townhome complex in North Carolina. We have a shared courtyard, a grassy area with benches, some flower beds and a small walking path. It's not technically a playground, but the neighborhood kids use it as one. Tag, soccer, scooters, you name it. I didn't mind at first. I work from home, and the sound of kids playing was nice background noise. It made the place feel alive. But then, over time, it got bad. It started with noise, not just kids laughing, but screaming. The kind of ear-piercing shrieks that make you drop your coffee. Then came the soccer balls, slamming into walls, cars, windows. One afternoon, a ball hit my kitchen window so hard it actually cracked. I looked outside, and there were 3 kids, all maybe 8 to 10, just staring at it like deer in headlights. I went out, calm but firm, and asked them which one kicked it. They all pointed at each other. I told them to please be more careful because they could have broken the glass completely. One of them, this little blonde kid, I think his name's Aiden, just said, "It's not your yard anyway." I blinked. "It's everyone's yard," I said. He goes, "Then it's mine too," and ran off. I laughed it off, but that moment stuck with me. A few days later, I found footprints through my flower beds. The kids had apparently been playing tag and used my garden as a shortcut. My lavender plants were crushed. My solar lights were snapped. I spent hours fixing it. The next day, same thing. I mentioned it to a couple of neighbors, including one mom. Melissa, whose kids I knew were part of the problem. She kind of laughed and said, "They're just kids. You can't cage them up. Cool. But can they not destroy my garden in the process?" It kept escalating. One evening, I came home to find a group of kids sitting on the hood of my car eating popsicles. Sticky handprints everywhere. When I told them to get off, one girl said, "My mom says we can play anywhere here." That was my breaking point. So I emailed the HOA not to ban the kids, just to ask for some basic rules. No balls near cars, no climbing on landscaping, quiet hours in the evening. That was it. A reasonable request, right? The HOA chair, this guy named Brian, thanked me for bringing it up and said they'd review it at the next meeting. I didn't think much of it. A week later, the email went out, effective immediately. Outdoor play involving sports equipment or rough activity is not permitted in the central courtyard. And just like that, the entire neighborhood turned on me. I didn't even know the rule had passed until my neighbor, Kelly, showed up at my door holding her phone and said, "Was this your doing?" Apparently, the HOA had mentioned a resident's repeated complaints about damage and disturbance. The moms went ballistic. The group chat exploded. "Who hates kids this much?" "Wow, some people just hate joy," one even said. "If you don't want to live near children, move to a retirement home." I didn't reply. Then came the subtle stuff. Or not so subtle. Kids deliberately playing near my unit. Riding scooters in circles right outside my patio. Shouting "sorry" every time one of them screamed. Melissa started parking in the spot next to mine and slamming her car door hard enough to set off my alarm. I finally told Brian, the HOA guy, that I hadn't wanted it banned completely. "Just some boundaries," he said. "I get it, but you'd be surprised how fast things escalate once people start making rules." We had to make it consistent. So now, because of me, the courtyard sits empty most afternoons. The flowers are intact. The windows are safe, and yet I feel awful. The weird thing is, part of me misses the noise. I walk past sometimes and see the benches empty, the grass perfectly still, and I wonder if I overreacted. But then I'll find another sticky handprint on my door, or remember Aiden saying, "It's mine too." And I think, no, maybe this was overdue. Then last week, something unexpected happened. I came home from the grocery store, and there was a letter taped to my door, handwritten in that awkward kid handwriting. "Sorry for breaking your flowers. We didn't mean to. We just wanted to play. I miss the grass. It's boring now." No name, just that. I stood there for a long time holding that letter. It hit me that these kids weren't trying to be malicious. They were just kids with too much energy and too little space. But I also realized that I wasn't wrong to want my home respected. The adults should have stepped up before it ever got to this point. That night, I walked to the HOA meeting in person for the first time. Brian was surprised to see me. I told them the ban wasn't fair. Not to the kids. Not to the families, not even to me. I suggested we create a compromise. Designate certain hours for play. Maybe set up a small fenced-off area for sports. It took a while, but people started listening. Even Melissa last weekend, the new rules went into effect. 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. play is allowed, but no hardballs or scooters near parked cars. The HOA even ordered a few benches and a portable basketball hoop for the far end of the lot. And guess what? It's working. I sat on my patio the other evening with a glass of wine, listening to the kids playing again, laughing, not screaming. And it didn't bother me this time. A couple of them waved. I waved back. I'm not the villain anymore. Or maybe I still am, but a softer one, either way. Peace has returned. Not the silent, heavy kind, but the kind where everyone finally learned how to share. It's been about 5 months since the Great Courtyard Ban, as the neighborhood kids apparently call it now, yes. I overheard that from behind my blinds one afternoon. Things have settled down a lot, though not exactly in the neat, sitcom ending way I thought they would, so. After the new compromise rules went into effect, things were mostly peaceful. The courtyard became a shared space again. Kids could play between certain hours. Adults could actually sit on the benches without dodging frisbees. And I could work from home without feeling like I lived next to a daycare run by caffeine. For a while, I thought that was that. But then life did what it always does. Threw curveballs. The first was Melissa. Remember her? The mom who laughed off the destruction and parked obnoxiously close to me? Well, she ended up being the unofficial spokesperson for the other parents. She approached me one Saturday morning while I was watering my plants. I braced myself, thinking she was going to start another passive-aggressive war. But instead, she surprised me. "Hey," she said, awkwardly rubbing the back of her neck. I just wanted to say, "You were right." That made me pause. I looked up, and she actually looked embarrassed. She explained that once the kids were limited to play hours, she realized how out of control things had been before. Her youngest had apparently kicked a ball through someone's porch lantern 2 weeks prior, and she'd had to pay for it. It was kinda eye-opening, she said. I didn't realize how wild they were being. I think we all just tuned it out. We talked for a while. Real talk. Not the thin-smiled politeness that neighbors usually do. I admitted that I missed the sound of kids playing the reasonable kind, and she admitted that she and the other moms felt guilty after the rule passed, but didn't know how to fix it without losing face. Since that conversation, Melissa's been different. We're not exactly friends, but we talk now. She even brought me a tray of lemon bars once, as a peace offering. I laughed and told her she could have just promised to keep her kids off my car. She grinned and said, "Deal." The second curveball came from the HOA. Apparently, after seeing how much calmer things were with structured hours, they decided to expand the rule to the other communal spaces in the complex. Not bans. Just posted shared use hours and quiet times. At first, some residents grumbled about over-regulation, but then one guy said his dog stopped barking constantly because there was less chaos. And that kind of ended the argument. But the wildest part? Brian, the HOA chair, actually asked me to help draft a community respect policy. Me, the woman everyone once called the courtyard witch? I laughed in his face at first, but then I thought about it. Why not? I'd spent months thinking about how people just don't talk to each other until something blows up. So I helped. We wrote a set of guidelines, not just about play, but about shared living. Stuff like talk to your neighbor before escalating to the HOA, and if you break something, own up and offer to fix it. Basic kindergarten-level human decency. But apparently it needed to be spelled out in Times New Roman, and here's the third curveball. That mysterious letter I got from the kid who apologized for breaking my flowers. I found out who wrote it one day. I was sitting on the bench by the courtyard, reading, when this boy, maybe 10 or 11, came up to me holding a soccer ball. I recognized him right away, Aiden, the one who'd said, "It's not your yard anyway." He was fidgeting, staring at his shoes. He said, "Did you get my note? From before?" My brain blanked for a second before it clicked. "You wrote that?" He nodded. "Yeah, I felt bad. Mom said not to bother you. But I didn't like that you were sad about the flowers. I swear, my heart just melted. I told him thank you, genuinely, and that I really appreciated it. He said he liked my garden now that it was colorful again, and asked if he could help water it sometimes. I said sure, so now, every few afternoons, Aiden comes by with his little blue watering can, and we talk about random stuff. His dog, school, how he wants to build his own YouTube channel someday. It's oddly grounding. His mom, a woman named Hannah, stopped by one day to say thank you. She looked mortified, like she thought I'd slam the door, but she wanted to make sure Aiden wasn't bothering me. I told her he wasn't, that he was actually helping. The next week, they left a small potted sunflower on my porch with a note. "Thanks for giving us another chance." It's funny, months ago, I couldn't even look at those kids without feeling frustrated. Now one of them's practically my little gardening buddy. The only real hiccup that's happened since was a new couple who moved in a few units down. They didn't know about the play hours and tried to host a birthday party with a rented bounce house in the courtyard. Within 15 minutes, Brian was out there with a clipboard, and the whole thing got shut down, and for once, I wasn't the villain. Someone even joked in the group chat, "Don't mess with the HOA, or you'll bring the wrath of the courtyard witch." To which I replied, "She's retired." Everyone laughed. Life feels balanced again. The courtyard's alive, but not chaotic. My flowers are thriving. People say hi to each other now. The HOA meetings don't feel like battlegrounds. Sometimes I sit outside in the early evening, glass of iced tea in hand, and listen to the kids playing tag, laughing, shouting, running through the grass but not my garden, and every once in a while, Aiden waves at me mid-game and yells, "Miss Lauren, watch this," before attempting some wild soccer trick. And I think, maybe the worst thing that ever happened to our neighborhood ended up being the best thing that could have happened, because somehow a broken window, some crushed lavender, and one badly worded HOA email managed to teach an entire community how to coexist. And if that makes me the reason kids can't play, well, at least they can now. The right way? It's been almost a full year since everything went down with the courtyard. If you told me last spring that I'd end up missing the sound of kids yelling outside, I would have laughed and called you insane. But here I am, sitting on my porch with a mug of coffee, watching a group of kids play tag, smiling like some kind of Hallmark movie extra. Things have changed a lot since then. First off, the courtyard looks amazing now. The HOA actually started a courtyard improvement fund, which I may or may not have suggested after 2 glasses of wine at a meeting. Every household chipped in, and we got new benches, solar lights, and even a little garden plot for the kids. Guess who's in charge of teaching them how to plant things properly? Yeah, me, Lauren. Former enemy of fun, now known as Plant Lady. The first few times the kids called me that, I'll admit I rolled my eyes. But now, it's kind of grown on me. Every Saturday morning, I set up a table with soil, seeds, and gloves. The kids come down, we plant something new, and I sneak in little lessons about responsibility and patience. Aiden, remember him? The boy who wrote me that apology letter. He's basically my unofficial assistant now. He takes it very seriously, wearing this little gardening apron his mom bought him. He's 12 now, taller, more confident. He told me he wants to become a landscape architect someday. I told him he's already halfway there. A few months ago, Aiden and his mom, Hannah, invited me over for dinner to say thank you for everything. It was this sweet little family meal, spaghetti, garlic bread, and a lopsided chocolate cake. Hannah teared up halfway through and told me that the changes in the neighborhood made her feel like she could finally let her son go outside without worrying. She said she was grateful I stood my ground when everyone else avoided confrontation. It caught me off guard. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I didn't do it to be brave or to stand up for the community. I did it because I was tired and angry. But maybe sometimes good things come out of frustration. Even Melissa, the one who used to glare at me from across the courtyard, is now on good terms with me. She brings her girls to the garden every weekend. They planted strawberries, and they check them obsessively, like little scientists. Melissa and I actually go on morning walks together now. We talk about work, life, parenting well, her parenting. I just nod and listen. And she once admitted that she used to call me Courtyard Karen behind my back. We both laughed so hard we almost tripped on the sidewalk. The HOA dynamic has shifted too. Brian stepped down as president last month because he's moving to Arizona. And believe it or not, everyone voted me in. I was hesitant at first, but he said, "You care more about this place than anyone I've met. And people trust you now, me, the woman who once got blamed for taking away the kids' playtime. Now I run meetings, draft notices, and somehow turn the most bureaucratic group of suburban adults into a halfway functional community. We even host potlucks now, which, if you knew how awkward this neighborhood used to be, you'd know is nothing short of a miracle. There's still the occasional flare-up. A new couple moved in last month and tried to park their RV in the courtyard. I wish I were joking. We nipped that in the bud fast, but I handled it with more grace than old me ever could have managed. I even brought them cookies after, to welcome them properly. I'm trying to be the neighbor I used to wish other people were to me. On a personal level, something else happened that surprised me. I actually feel connected to this place now. Before all this, I was honestly pretty isolated. I worked from home, kept my head down, and told myself I didn't need anyone. But this mess forced me to interact, to speak up, to find a middle ground, and it turns out, community isn't just a nice idea. It's something you build, little by little. Awkwardly and stubbornly, last week, the HOA hosted a summer BBQ in the courtyard. Someone brought a big inflatable screen for an outdoor movie night. Families spread out blankets. Couples brought lawn chairs. Kids ran around catching fireflies. As the movie started, Aiden sat next to me, eating popcorn. At one point, he leaned over and said, "I'm glad you didn't move away, Miss Lauren." And that hit me harder than I expected. Because I almost did move, back when things were bad. I'd even started looking at apartments across town. I thought it would be easier to start over somewhere new than to keep fighting with people who didn't care. But if I had left, none of this would have happened. The garden, the new friendships, the peace. I smiled and told him, "Me too, kiddo." When the movie ended, the whole courtyard glowed under those little solar lights. Parents gathered up blankets, kids said their goodnights. And for a moment I just sat there, listening to the faint sound of laughter and cicadas. It's strange. All the things that once annoyed me are now the things that make this place feel like home. The squeaky gate, the basketball thumps, the smell of someone grilling too close to my window. They're all small reminders that life is being lived here. Loudly, messily, but beautifully. So yeah, maybe I was the reason the kids couldn't play for a while. But if I hadn't spoken up, none of us would have learned how to share this space properly. Now they play, I garden, we talk, we coexist. And every time I hear the sound of Aiden laughing in the courtyard, I'm reminded that sometimes the most uncomfortable moments in life, the ones that make everyone angry and defensive, are the ones that actually pull people closer together in the end. Funny how that works. Stories number 9. It, unfortunately, finally happened to me. I always read about stuff like this on Reddit, but I honestly never thought it would happen to me. You see those posts, people losing everything because someone broke into their home, got scammed online, or had their identity stolen, and you think, wow, that's awful, but I'm careful, so it won't be me. I used to think that too, until last week. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm 31, work remotely for a marketing firm, and live alone in a little one-bedroom apartment downtown. It's not fancy, but it's cozy, and I've always felt safe here. I keep to myself, lock my doors, and don't post much personal stuff online. I thought I had it figured out. Last Monday, around 11 p.m., I was finishing up some client reports. My laptop was plugged in on my desk next to the big window that looks out onto the street. It's one of those old buildings where the windows don't have great locks. But since I'm on the second floor, I never really worried. That night, I heard a weird sound outside. Kind of like a scraping or tapping noise at first. I thought maybe it was a branch hitting the window because it was windy. But the sound got louder, like metal scraping on glass. Then I heard the faint thunk of the window frame moving. My stomach dropped. I froze for a second, not sure if I was imagining things. Then, before I could react, the window slid open. A gloved hand reached in. Fumbling for the latch, I didn't even think. I just shouted, "Hey!" and grabbed the nearest thing I could, my stainless steel water bottle. I swung it at the window, hitting the glass hard enough to make a loud crack. The hand disappeared instantly, and I heard footsteps pounding away down the alley. I ran to lock the window, heart hammering in my chest. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone trying to call 911. The dispatcher was calm, asked me a few questions, and said an officer would be there soon when the cops arrived. They checked the area and found footprints in the mud outside. One of them shined his flashlight up at the window and said, "Looks like he used a crowbar to pry it open. Probably an opportunist. Someone who saw your lights on and figured you'd be asleep soon." That line stuck with me. Figured I'd be asleep soon. It made me feel weirdly vulnerable. Like I was living in a glass box. Someone had been watching me from the street, close enough to see what I was doing. The officer, a guy named Daniels, was kind but blunt. He told me to get a window lock and a camera, and maybe even talk to my landlord about better lighting in the alley. Then he handed me a card and said, "Call us if anything else happens." These guys usually come back if they think they saw something worth taking. That, "if they come back" part didn't exactly make me feel better. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep right. Every noise made me jump. I'd check the window every 10 minutes. Even though I'd installed a makeshift lock and ordered a motion sensor light from Amazon, when it arrived, I set it up facing the alley. Then Friday night came. It was around 2 a.m. I was lying in bed, scrolling Reddit of all things, when the motion light went off. The glow flashed across my ceiling, and my heart started racing again. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the window. There was someone down there, a man in a hoodie, standing directly under the light, looking up at my apartment. For a second, we just stared at each other. Then he turned and bolted. I called 911 again, and this time they sent 2 patrol cars. The officers checked the area but didn't find anyone. Daniels came back, same guy from before, and told me he'd pull the camera footage from a nearby store. I told him I'd also ordered a cheap security cam for my window that would arrive the next morning. By then I'd stopped pretending I was calm. I called my older brother David at 3 a.m. and asked if I could crash at his place. He didn't even hesitate. "Pack a bag, I'll come get you." The next day, we went back to my apartment so I could grab more stuff. In the daylight, it didn't seem as scary, but when I looked closely at the window, I saw fresh scratches near the frame. Someone had tried again. David got quiet when he saw that. He told me I should stay with him for a few days, maybe even talk to the landlord about breaking the lease. I didn't want to overreact, but deep down I knew he was right. That night we installed the camera anyway, just to have it running. We checked the feed together before leaving. Nothing unusual. Fast forward to Sunday morning. I woke up at David's place to 6 notifications from the camera app. When I opened it, my blood ran cold at 3:42 a.m. A man climbed up onto the dumpster below my window. Same hoodie, same stance. He tried the window again. When it didn't open, he looked directly at the camera, then smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small, knowing smirk. Then he climbed back down and walked away. The police took it seriously this time. They reviewed the footage and said it matched the description of a guy who'd been breaking into apartments in the area. Daniels called later to say they'd arrested someone a few blocks over trying to sell stolen laptops. I had to come down to the station to confirm the footage. And yeah, it was the same guy. He'd apparently been targeting older buildings with easy-to-open windows. They found crowbars, gloves, and a list of addresses in his backpack. Mine was on it. When I heard that, I just sat there in the station for a minute, feeling this weird mix of relief and nausea, like I'd been holding my breath for a week straight. It's been a couple of weeks since then, and I've moved out of that apartment. My landlord agreed to terminate the lease without penalty after the police report came through. I'm staying with David temporarily while I look for a new place. Somewhere with better security. I still think about it sometimes. The sound of the window. That smile. The idea that someone had been watching me for days, maybe weeks. It's hard not to feel paranoid, but I also feel lucky. Lucky that I woke up. Lucky that I listened to that gut feeling. And if you're reading this thinking it won't happen to you, just do me a favor. Double-check your windows tonight, because that's exactly what I thought before it, unfortunately, finally happened to me. It's been about a month since everything went down, and I finally feel like I can breathe again. Though normal still feels like a word that belongs to someone else's life. After the break-ins, I stayed at my brother David's for almost 3 weeks. At first, I couldn't even bring myself to go outside alone. Every sound made me jump. Every man in a hoodie made my heart spike. David was patient. Even though I know it must have been hard for him to watch me spiral like that. He'd make coffee every morning and leave it by my door, pretending not to notice that I hadn't slept. Eventually, I started seeing a therapist, a woman named Dr. Keller. She's been helping me work through the fear and the guilt. Because yeah, there's guilt, not logical but real. Like I should have done something different. Should have had better locks. Should have noticed the guy watching me sooner, Dr. Keller keeps telling me. You didn't invite danger into your life. It found you, and you survived it. I'm trying to believe her. The police ended up charging the guy, his name's Marcus, with multiple counts of burglary and attempted break-ins. Turns out he'd hit at least 6 apartments in the area. They found stolen electronics, jewelry, even personal documents from other victims. I went to the preliminary hearing last week. I almost didn't go, but part of me needed to see it through. When they brought him in, he looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, not the boogeyman I'd built in my head. Still, when he glanced toward the audience, my hands went cold. I don't even think he saw me, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. Afterward, Officer Daniels, the one who'd helped me from the start, came over and asked how I was holding up. I told him the truth. I'm better, but I'm not okay. He said that's how most people feel. The body heals from fear faster than the mind, he told me. I've been thinking about that a lot. In the meantime, I found a new place. It's a small townhouse just outside the city, part of a quiet community with actual security cameras, motion lights, and solid doors. The first night I slept there, I still woke up twice to check the locks. But it's getting easier. There's a dog park down the road. And I'm seriously considering adopting a rescue. Partly for the company, partly because I want an excuse to feel safe again. The best part, though, is how this whole mess brought me closer to people I'd kind of drifted from. My brother calls every day now. My best friend Lauren came over to help me decorate the new place. And we ended up laughing for hours, something I hadn't done in months. Even my mom, who lives 2 states away, drove up last weekend just to spend time with me. For the first time in a while, my apartment feels like a home again, not a crime scene frozen in my memory. Last night, I stood by my new window, looking out at the streetlights and the quiet houses, and I realized something. Fear doesn't just leave you one day. You outgrow it slowly, you rebuild over it. You learn to exist again, one locked door and deep breath at a time. I'm still that person who got scared in the middle of the night, staring at a stranger's hand reaching through her window. But I'm also the person who fought back, who called for help, who moved on. It took me a while to accept that both can be true. So yeah, it happened to me, the thing I thought only happened to other people. But I'm still here. And if anyone else reading this has been through something similar, I just want to say it does get better. Not perfect, not instantly, but better. And for now, that's enough. It's been 6 months since everything happened. And I think this will be my final update. Not because everything is magically fine, but because I've finally reached a point where the story doesn't feel like it belongs to just the worst thing that happened to me. It's part of my life now, but it's not the whole thing anymore. After I moved into the townhouse, I spent weeks trying to convince myself it was safe. Every noise made me flinch. Every creak had me holding my breath. But slowly, things started shifting. I bought a small rescue dog, a brown and white mutt named Cody, who's all ears and no sense of personal space. The first few nights he barked at shadows, but weirdly enough, that made me feel calmer. Someone else was alert for me. Cody changed everything. Suddenly I had a reason to get out of bed, to walk, to meet neighbors. That's how I got to know Sharon, the older woman 2 doors down, and her husband Bill. They invited me for coffee one Saturday, and when I told them what had happened before I moved here, Sharon reached across the table and said, "You're safe now, honey. Don't let fear steal more than it already has." That sentence stuck with me. Therapy helped too, Dr. Keller's been guiding me through trauma recovery, but lately, our sessions have been less about fear and more about rebuilding confidence. We've talked about how survival sometimes makes you shrink yourself, how I'd started apologizing for existing too loudly, checking doors twice, walking faster, scanning every parking lot. She said healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming the space you deserve to live in. I finally took that advice literally. Last month, I started painting again, this time on huge canvases that take up half my living room. They're messy, bright, full of movement, the opposite of how I felt for so long. There's something healing in putting chaos on a surface and controlling it with color. As for Marcus, the man who broke in, he was sentenced to 6 years. The detective called me after the trial ended to let me know. I didn't go to the final hearing. I didn't want to see him again. Knowing justice was done was enough. I thought I'd feel some rush of relief, but instead it was quiet. Like the air finally stopped buzzing. The nightmares still come sometimes. I wake up to Cody pawing at my arm, or to the faint echo of a noise that isn't really there, but the panic doesn't grip me like it used to. I breathe through it, remind myself that I'm not back in that apartment, that the locks are strong, that Cody's tail is thumping next to me. I've also reconnected with people I hadn't realized I'd pulled away from. Lauren and I go hiking on weekends now. My brother comes over for dinner every Thursday, bringing takeout and teasing Cody for being spoiled. My mom's even planning to visit for Thanksgiving. For a long time, I didn't think I'd ever host anyone again. But now I'm actually looking forward to it. Cooking, decorating, having laughter in this space that once felt so fragile. One thing I've learned is that safety isn't just physical, it's emotional too. It's the people you let close, the boundaries you keep, the strength you rebuild when no one's watching. When I first wrote about what happened, I was scared, ashamed, and angry. I thought I'd never stop being those things, but standing here now, with paint on my hands, a dog snoring on the couch, and a future that feels like mine again, I finally see that surviving something terrible doesn't define you. What defines you is how you live after it. So yeah, it happened to me. But it's not who I am anymore. Stories number 10. My wife tried to blame me for our split, so I sent her family the truth. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this. But here we are. I, 36M, have been married to my wife, Emily, 34F, for 8 years. We met in college, got married after graduation, and built what I thought was a solid, quiet life together. No kids, just us and our golden retriever, Scout. We had our routines, our favorite coffee shop, our weekend hikes, all the cliches that come with being a happy couple, except apparently, I was the only one who thought we were happy. It started small. Late nights working, her phone always face down. I'd ask who she was texting, and she'd brush me off with a casual co-worker stuff. I'm not a paranoid guy by nature, but after a few months of that, something felt off. She started dressing up more for work, wearing perfume again. The kind she hadn't touched since our anniversary 2 years ago. Then one night, she came home late from a client dinner, and I caught a glimpse of her phone light up with a name I didn't recognize. Tyler. That was it. I couldn't ignore it anymore. When she fell asleep that night, I opened her phone. I know, invasion of privacy, but I had to know the truth. And the truth hit me like a freight train. Dozens of messages. I can't wait to see you again. He's so clueless. You make me feel alive. Pictures, videos, all time-stamped over the last 6 months. I sat there numb for almost 2 hours reading everything. The next morning I confronted her. She didn't deny it. She just cried, said she didn't mean for it to happen, that things had been distant between us. I told her distance doesn't make you climb into another man's bed. She begged me not to tell anyone, said she'd end it, go to therapy, whatever it took. But something in me broke that night. I told her I wanted a separation. For a while, she acted civil. We quietly started dividing things, talked about her moving in with a friend, but then she started twisting the narrative, telling people I was the one who emotionally neglected her, that I'd been cold and distant for years, that she was the victim of a loveless marriage. I found out because her sister, Jenna, texted me asking if I was okay after everything Emily said. That was my breaking point. I didn't yell, I didn't rage, I just compiled. I took screenshots of everything. The messages, the pictures, the dates. I put them in a neat little PDF and sent them to her family group chat. Her parents, her sister, her brother-in-law, the subject line, for context. Then I turned off my phone and went for a long drive. When I got back, my phone had blown up. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. Emily had gone ballistic. She accused me of humiliating her, said I'd destroyed her reputation and crossed the line. Her mom called me crying, saying she couldn't believe her daughter would do something like that. Her dad, on the other hand, sent me a short message. I'm sorry, son. You didn't deserve that. I didn't respond. For weeks afterward, Emily tried to do damage control. She claimed I'd edited the screenshots, that I was being vindictive, but no one bought it. Her family backed away from her. Her friends stopped inviting her out. And Tyler, the guy she'd risked everything for, dumped her once it all came out. Meanwhile, I moved out of our house, found a small apartment, and started therapy. The first few weeks were brutal. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The lies. The way she looked me in the eye while living a double life. My therapist told me anger was part of grief, that I wasn't wrong for wanting the truth to be known. Still, sometimes I wonder if I went too far. It wasn't about revenge when I sent those messages. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I just couldn't stand by while she painted me as the villain in a story where I was the one betrayed. I wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside of me. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't the cold, distant husband she made me out to be. But the fallout has been heavy. A few months ago, I ran into Jenna at a coffee shop. She hugged me and said she was sorry for believing Emily at first. She told me Emily was living with a friend now, trying to figure herself out. She also said their mom still cries sometimes. Not because of what I did, but because she doesn't recognize her daughter anymore. That hit me harder than I expected. I don't hate Emily. I'm angry, sure, but I don't wish her harm. I think she lost herself somewhere along the way, and I got caught in the blast radius. I still miss the version of her I married. The girl who used to dance around the kitchen barefoot, who'd fall asleep with her head on my chest while we watched dumb movies. That person doesn't exist anymore. People online talk about closure, like it's something you find, but it's not. It's something you build, piece by piece. When there's nothing left to salvage, I'm slowly building mine. I still have Scout. I still have my friends, who showed up for me in ways I never expected. And every morning when I walk that dog, I remind myself that I'm finally living honestly again. No secrets, no pretending everything's fine. Sometimes I think about deleting those screenshots, but then I stop myself. Not because I need to hold on to them, but because they're proof that I survived something that nearly broke me. The truth has a way of burning everything down before it sets you free. And maybe that's what this whole mess was. Ugly, painful freedom update. It's been about 8 months since everything blew up, and I thought I was finally done talking about this. But after a few messages from people who read my original post, and some things that happened recently, I figured I'd give an update. I'll start with the obvious. Emily and I are officially divorced. The papers were finalized 2 weeks ago. Seeing my name alone on that line where it used to say husband and wife hit me harder than I expected. I thought I'd be relieved, but honestly it was bittersweet. Like signing off on the death certificate of a life I thought I'd still be living. The last few months were a blur of court dates, mediation sessions, and awkward encounters. We didn't fight over much. No kids, no shared business, just the house, the dog, and some savings. I kept Scout, of course. She didn't even argue that. It's weird. Though, she bought that dog with me, picked him out from the shelter. But when the time came, she just shrugged and said, "He's more yours than mine anyway." That sentence summed up everything, I think. But here's where things got messy again. After the family found out what she'd done, she moved in with a coworker temporarily. Not Tyler, someone else. She cut contact with her parents for a while, claiming they sided with me. Then out of nowhere she texted me in June. It was the first message I'd gotten from her in months. It just said, "Can we talk? Just talk." My therapist told me I didn't owe her that conversation, but curiosity got the better of me. We met at this little diner halfway between where we both live. She looked older, tired, like someone who'd been running on guilt and caffeine for months. She told me she was sorry for the affair, for lying, for everything, she cried. And for the first time since it all happened, I didn't feel angry, just sad. Then she said something that kind of stuck with me. I didn't even love him. I just hated the person I'd become, and I blamed you for it. I didn't know what to say to that. There's no right response when someone admits they wrecked your marriage out of self-hatred. I just told her I hoped she'd figure herself out and left it at that. After that meeting, she started reaching out to her family again. And from what I hear through mutual friends, things are slowly thawing. Her sister, Jenna, told me Emily's been going to therapy, apparently. She's working part-time and volunteering at an animal shelter. I guess that's something, but not everyone forgave her. Her dad hasn't spoken to her since that night everything came out. He's an old-school guy. Loyalty means everything to him. And he took her betrayal personally. I can't lie. Part of me feels guilty for being the reason they're estranged. I never wanted to break her family apart. I just wanted the truth to be known. Still, there's this small, selfish part of me that feels vindicated, knowing she's facing consequences for what she did. As for me, I've been trying to rebuild. I moved to a smaller town about an hour away from where we used to live. Found a cozy little rental with a big yard for Scout. I started rock climbing. Joined a book club, don't laugh. It's actually fun. And even reconnected with some old college friends. The crazy thing is, for the first time in years, I feel like me again. It's not all sunshine and healing montages, though there are still bad nights. Sometimes I'll wake up and reach over, expecting someone to be there. I'll catch myself thinking, I should text Emily about this movie, before remembering she's not that person anymore. And honestly, Neither am I. A few months ago I did start seeing someone new. Her name's Brooke. She's 31, works as a nurse, and she's got this calm energy that feels like a balm after everything I went through. I told her about my past right from the start. She didn't flinch or pity me, just nodded and said, "Everyone's got a story." I don't know if this thing with Brooke will last. I'm not rushing it. I told myself I wouldn't fall into another relationship just because I was lonely. I want to do this one right. No secrets, no pretending, no resentment simmering under the surface. As for Emily, I haven't heard from her since that diner meeting. She sent me a short email after the divorce was finalized, saying she was glad I was moving forward and that she hopes I find happiness. No dramatics, no pleas for another chance, just quiet acceptance, and weirdly enough, that felt like the real closure. People always ask if I regret sending those messages to her family. Honestly, no, I think about it sometimes. And yeah, maybe it was harsh, but it was the truth. And the truth mattered. To me, to her family, to the person I was before all of this happened. It forced her to confront the fallout of her choices. And it forced me to finally stop trying to be the nice guy who protected everyone but himself. I've realized something since then. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about deciding you're not going to let them live rent-free in your head anymore. I forgave her quietly, not for her but for me, because carrying that anger around started to feel like drinking poison and waiting for her to get sick. Now, I spend my weekends hiking with Scout, reading more, cooking actual meals instead of eating takeout every night. It's small stuff, but it feels big in its own way. If Emily ever reads this, and I doubt she will, I hope she knows that I don't hate her. I just hope she learns from what she did and stops running from herself. And if anyone reading this is sitting on a secret like the one I found that night, I'll just say this. Trust your gut, the truth hurts, but living a lie hurts more. Sometimes the ugliest ending is the only one that gives you your life back. Final update. It's been a little over a year since I last posted, and life has changed in ways I couldn't have predicted. When I first wrote that story, I was still angry, raw, confused, and trying to justify my actions to strangers because I couldn't make sense of them myself. Now, with distance, therapy, and time, I see things a lot differently. To start, Emily and I haven't spoken since that last brief email exchange after the divorce. There's been no drama, no surprise phone calls, no "I miss you" messages late at night. It's like we silently agreed to just let each other go. About 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a message from her sister, Jenna. She wanted to let me know Emily had moved out of state, to Oregon, of all places. Apparently, she wanted a fresh start. She'd gotten a job at an animal rescue center and was living with some friends she met through volunteering. She's also still in therapy, according to Jenna. I didn't ask for that information, but I'll admit, it made me feel oddly relieved to know she's at least trying to rebuild her life in a healthy way. I haven't seen her since the diner meeting, but sometimes, when I'm out walking Scout and I pass a woman with the same hair color or laugh, I'll get this weird ache in my chest. Not longing, more like a ghost of what could have been. I think that's normal, though. You don't spend years building a life with someone and then just erase them. You carry the memories, even if they're lighter now. For a while, I struggled with guilt over how things ended. Not about exposing her, I still stand by that, but about how publicly everything fell apart. I didn't realize how wide the ripples would spread. Her family relationships are still strained. Her dad never really forgave her. And her mom, well, her mom sent me a Christmas card last year. If you can believe that, it said, "Thank you for loving my daughter." Even when she didn't deserve it, I sat there staring at that line for a long time. It felt like someone acknowledging the grief I couldn't name. And yeah, I know. Some people will say I should have left it all alone, not involved anyone else, but if I'd done that, I think I'd still be carrying the weight of her secret like it was mine. And I was done doing that. On my end, things have been peaceful, not perfect, but peaceful. Brooke and I are still together, a year ago. I wasn't sure where it would go, but now we've got a rhythm. She moved in about 4 months ago, and it's been surprisingly easy. We're not rushing anything. She's been clear she's not looking to replace anyone, and I'm not trying to make her. We're just building something slow and honest. She knows everything. She was actually the one who encouraged me to start therapy again earlier this year after I had a minor breakdown around the anniversary of finding the texts. I didn't realize how much anger I was still bottling up until one night I snapped at her over something small, like stupid small, and immediately saw the fear flash across her face. It was like I became the kind of man I swore I'd never be. one who punished the wrong person for someone else's mistakes. Therapy's been good for me, hard but good. I've learned that what Emily did wasn't just about betrayal. It broke something fundamental in the way I viewed relationships. I used to think love meant endurance, sticking it out no matter what. Now I know love also means protecting your peace, even if that means walking away. There's one more thing I want to mention, something that happened recently that kind of closed the book for me in an unexpected way. About a month ago, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Emily. No return address, just my name in handwriting I recognized instantly. I sat there for a while before opening it. Part of me didn't want to. I thought, what good could come of this now? But curiosity won. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. She said she'd been in therapy for almost a year and had reached a place where she wanted to take accountability properly. She apologized again, but not in that vague, guilty way she used to. She wrote that she'd spent a lot of time unpacking why she did what she did. The resentment, the insecurity, the self-sabotage, and for the first time she didn't blame me. She said she understood that her actions destroyed something we both worked hard to build, and that she would live with that for the rest of her life. The last line read, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you found peace. You deserved better than what I gave you." I sat there for a long time after reading that. And then I burned the letter, not out of anger, but because it felt like it didn't need to exist anymore. I didn't want to hold on to it or revisit it every time I felt nostalgic. I wanted it gone, like finally closing a chapter. I didn't write her back. There's nothing left to say these days. I spend most of my time working, hiking with Scout, and just living. It's simple. And it's enough. I've started seeing my friends again. The ones I isolated myself from during the marriage. They tell me I seem lighter now. I think they're right. The biggest thing I've learned through all this, healing isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's not this huge cinematic moment of closure. It's just one day realizing you went a whole afternoon without thinking about the person who hurt you. Or that you can tell a story about them without feeling like you're going to break. Sometimes I think about that first night, sitting in my car, hands shaking, realizing my marriage was over. And I wish I could go back and tell that version of me, "You'll be okay. It'll hurt like hell, but you'll be okay because I am." And if anyone reading this is in that place, the one where your world just imploded, and you don't know how you'll ever move on, you will. Slowly, quietly, in the smallest of ways. You'll laugh again, trust again, love again. You'll start living again. Not because they made amends. Not because you got revenge, but because you finally realized you don't need either to be whole. Stories number 11. Neighbor kept opening my packages. For building safety, so I reported her and the HOA fined her. I moved into this condo complex in March of last year. After getting relocated for work, I'm 31 and work remotely in marketing. So I spend a lot of time at home. It's a quiet building, mostly retirees or older couples, which I actually liked. Less noise, fewer parties, no random college kids blasting music at 2 a.m. But one neighbor, Karen, yes, her actual name, has been a headache since week 1. She's in her early 60s, retired, and self-appointed herself as the eyes and ears of the building. She told me that when I first met her in the lobby, holding a clipboard and wearing a shirt that literally said Community Watch Volunteer. At first, she just came off as nosy. She'd hover in the mailroom, checking what packages were being delivered. She'd knock on doors to remind people about recycling days or HOA notices. She'd even comment on how often people ordered from Amazon. I shrugged it off as an older neighbor with too much free time. About 2 weeks after I moved in, I started noticing my packages had been opened, the first time. I thought it was an accident. Maybe the tape came loose or the mail carrier messed up. But then it kept happening. Every box from Amazon or UPS had been sliced open neatly and then taped back together with different tape. The weird part? Nothing was stolen. Not once. Just opened and resealed. I caught on when I ordered a new mechanical keyboard and got a knock at my door the day it was delivered. I opened it to see Karen standing there, holding my box. Hi, this was in the lobby. I went ahead and opened it to make sure it wasn't something dangerous. "You know, for building safety," she said, smiling like she'd done me a favor. I was too stunned to speak for a second. "You opened my package?" Well, you never know these days. People are sending all sorts of chemicals, electronics, lithium batteries. You wouldn't want an explosion, would you? I was dumbfounded. "Karen, you can't open other people's mail. That's illegal." She just waved her hand. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I'm just being proactive. You should be thanking me." Then she handed over the opened box and walked away. I stood there holding it, my name clearly on the label, thinking there's no way this woman actually believes she's doing the right thing. I decided to document everything after that. Every package that came opened, I took pictures of. I started using the Amazon locker nearby for anything valuable, but smaller stuff still came to my door. I even asked the mail carrier if she'd noticed anything weird. She said she'd seen Karen checking boxes in the lobby before. Then it escalated. One afternoon, I came home early from errands and caught Karen in the act. She had a box cutter and was opening a box from Target that clearly had my name and apartment number. "Karen," I yelled. She jumped and nearly dropped the box. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in," she said, flustered. "I was just making sure this wasn't food or something that could spoil. You know how people forget things." I told her flat out that I was reporting her. She tried to talk me down, saying I was overreacting and that she was just trying to keep the community safe. She even said, "The HOA trusts me. I'm like the unofficial security." So that's exactly who I went to. The HOA. I sent a long email with photos of the opened packages, timestamps, and even a video I'd taken from my doorbell camera showing her picking up a box, walking off with it, and returning it later. It took about a week, but the HOA president, a guy named Jeff, mid-40s, super professional, reached out to set up a meeting. He said they'd received multiple complaints about Karen before. She'd been inspecting packages, knocking on doors about noise that didn't exist, and once even called animal control because she thought someone's cat was illegal. Jeff told me they'd already warned her twice. My evidence was the last straw. About a week later, a notice went up on the building bulletin board saying that tampering with mail or packages belonging to other residents will result in fines and potential legal consequences. I didn't see Karen around for a few days after that. But when I did, she looked furious. She came up to me in the parking lot and said, "You didn't have to report me. You could have just talked to me like an adult." I told her I did talk to her, multiple times. And she didn't listen. She huffed and said, "You young people are so ungrateful. I've been protecting this building for years." Turns out, the HOA fined her $500 and revoked her volunteer privileges. She's now banned from handling packages in any way. Jeff told me privately that if she does it again, they'll contact the police for mail tampering. Since then, my deliveries have been untouched. I even heard from another neighbor, Martha, that Karen's been avoiding the mailroom entirely and is embarrassed. She apparently tried to blame me for targeting an elderly woman. But no one bought it because everyone knew how she was. I'd like to say I feel bad, but honestly, I don't. I gave her multiple chances to stop. I even tried to be polite about it at first, but she crossed a line. Opening someone else's mail isn't safety. It's invasive. Now every time I see a delivery driver, I make sure to thank them, because after dealing with Karen's inspections, getting an untouched package feels like a small miracle. It's been about 3 months since Karen got fined and banned from touching packages, and the whole situation has settled down, though not without some lingering tension. I've noticed a shift in the building's atmosphere. People are a little more aware of boundaries now. Neighbors who were quiet before have started talking to each other more, sharing stories about strange encounters with Karen over the years. Some of them even thanked me quietly, saying they were too intimidated to report her themselves. I decided to take extra steps for peace of mind. I installed a small security camera in my hallway near the door and got a smart lock for my apartment. Nothing crazy, just enough that I feel like I know what's happening when I'm away. It also helped me sleep better. I realized how much mental energy I was spending just worrying about packages and whether Karen was lurking around. Interestingly, a few neighbors have started approaching me about other HOA issues now. They trust that I'll take action responsibly, which is a weird position to be in. Lauren, a neighbor from across the hall, asked me for advice on dealing with noise complaints from another resident. I guess they see me as someone who doesn't back down when boundaries are crossed. I didn't expect that, but it feels good to be trusted. Karen hasn't tried to approach me directly since the fine. I've seen her in the lobby a couple of times, glaring, but she keeps her distance. Last week, I noticed she dropped a piece of mail that wasn't hers and glared at me as if blaming me for it. Honestly, I laughed quietly to myself. She's been forced to follow the rules she spent years ignoring. The HOA seems to have learned something too. Jeff mentioned that they're putting together a clearer policy about package handling and building watch programs. Apparently, Karen's case was kind of a wake-up call for them. They realized, leaving a single resident with that much self-appointed authority can cause real problems. I've also started having friends over more. Before, I avoided inviting people because I felt hyper-aware of Karen and the potential for confrontation. Now, with security measures in place and the HOA backing up rules, I feel more relaxed. Last weekend, we had a small game night in my living room with 4 friends. Cody, my dog, was the star, naturally. And for the first time in months, I wasn't distracted by paranoia. I could just enjoy being home. Even work has gotten easier. I used to feel anxious about receiving packages containing office supplies or equipment for remote projects. Now, I don't check the hallway every 10 minutes. I trust the delivery process again. It's amazing how much mental load a single person's inappropriate behavior can add to your life. Karen's been a cautionary tale for the whole building. The younger residents, especially, have started being more vigilant about their mail and packages. Some have even shared funny stories about previous encounters with Karen, which has helped everyone process the absurdity of the situation. I've realized that humor is a good coping mechanism, and it's helped me move past the initial anger and fear. I'm finally at a point where thinking about that period doesn't spike my blood pressure. I can recall the annoyance and the stress, sure, but it's more of a story now than an ongoing crisis. And the small victories, my untouched packages, a safe hallway, neighbors who respect boundaries, feel surprisingly empowering. For anyone dealing with a similar situation, document everything. Involve the HOA or management, and don't let someone's self-righteous behavior take over your life. It may feel confrontational at first, but setting firm boundaries ultimately protects your peace of mind. The building is calmer, my packages remain mine, and Karen is officially off the delivery watch list. For now, that's enough. It's been almost a year since the whole package fiasco with Karen, and I think this will be my final update. Looking back, it feels surreal that something as small as opening my mail could create such a drawn-out ordeal, but it really affected my daily life for months. I've learned a lot about boundaries, trust, and community dynamics, and I think it's finally safe to reflect on everything with some perspective. Karen is still around, but she's kept her distance entirely. I haven't seen her in the lobby in months, and the HOA reports she hasn't been involved in any volunteer programs since. Rumor has it she tried to complain to the board about other neighbors being rude, but Jeff, the HOA president, shut that down immediately. It's clear that she's no longer in a position to interfere with anyone's packages, and honestly, the building feels lighter without her constant hovering. I've also noticed how much I've grown in confidence during this period. I used to avoid confrontation at all costs. Now I've learned that speaking up isn't just okay, it's necessary. I'm more assertive with neighbors, and I've even helped a few others navigate small conflicts. There's a sense of empowerment in being the person who enforces boundaries, not out of ego but out of necessity. Cody, my little mutt, has been an absolute blessing. Having him around has not only helped with my anxiety, but also introduced me to new neighbors and even a few friends from the dog park. I've realized that part of reclaiming my space and my peace of mind involved not just physical measures like cameras and locks, but also building connections in my community. The dog park became a place of social security in a sense. Friendly faces, casual conversations, and shared responsibility for pets. My packages are finally safe, and I don't spend my days checking the hallway or worrying about Karen. I even started ordering some of the larger items that I previously avoided, like a standing desk and office chair. When they arrive, I can now receive them without stress, and it's a small but meaningful relief. I've also started hosting gatherings again. For the first time in over a year, I invited friends over for a small dinner party. It was casual, cozy, and no one had to worry about package inspections. I felt normal again, like my apartment belonged to me. That sense of normalcy is the real victory here. Reflecting on the experience, I see that it was about more than just mail. It was about personal space, autonomy, and asserting your rights in the face of someone else's overreach. Reporting. Karen wasn't about revenge. It was about enforcing boundaries, and making sure no one else had to deal with the stress I endured. In hindsight, I have no regrets. If anything, the ordeal has made me more mindful of my surroundings and more appreciative of neighbors who respect privacy, people like Jeff, who handled the situation professionally, and those who quietly supported me, reminded me that a community works best when respect is mutual. So, yes, it happened. A neighbor crossing every line imaginable, packages opened, personal space violated. But in the end, I reclaimed my home, my peace of mind, and even a little sense of empowerment I didn't know I had. Life is quieter now, my mail is safe, and Karen's influence is finally gone. I'm grateful for the closure, and even a little amused at the absurdity of the situation in hindsight. Stories number 12. We lied to get someone expelled. And it turned out. We were right. When I was 16, I learned the hard way that doing something awful for a good reason doesn't make it any less awful. And that sometimes, karma doesn't just come for bad people. It circles back for everyone involved. This was back in high school, in a little Ohio town where drama spread faster than flu season. Everyone knew everyone, teachers included, and rumors were basically our school's main form of communication. I hung out with 3 people pretty much every day: Tyler, Maya, and Rachel. We weren't popular, but we weren't invisible either. We were the kind of kids teachers trusted and other students left alone. Then Evan transferred in. He was tall, quiet, kind of weird, but not in a dangerous way. Just offbeat. He wore band tees from groups no one had heard of, always had earbuds in, and doodled in his notebook constantly. The guy barely spoke to anyone unless it was a teacher asking a question. Naturally, that made him an instant target. For the first few weeks, nobody cared about him. Then one day in history class, I saw something scribbled in the margins of his notes. Little stick figures drawn in pencil. They looked like students in our class. One of them had X's for eyes. Another had a knife stuck in its chest. I pointed it out to Rachel later, half joking, half unnerved. "Dude, what if he's like planning something?" Rachel laughed it off. But later that week, Maya swore she saw him at lunch reading a book about psychopaths. I don't even know if that was true. Maya had a flair for exaggeration, but that was enough for her to bring it up to us in our group chat. Tyler, being the idiot ringleader he always was, joked that we should get him kicked out before he goes Columbine on us. It was dark humor, but back then, dark humor was how we handled everything. Except the joke didn't stay a joke. It started small, whispering about how Evan stared at people too long, how he never smiled, how he had that look. Rachel told her mom she didn't feel safe in class with him. Her mom called the school. That's when the counselor asked Rachel to come talk about it, and that's where it snowballed. Rachel told them she'd seen Evan writing something violent. Maya backed her up, saying she overheard him talking about revenge. Tyler added that he saw disturbing drawings in Evan's locker. They were all lies. All of them, me? I didn't say much, but when the school asked if I'd noticed anything strange, I just didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it either. I just said, he's quiet, but sometimes he makes me uncomfortable. That was enough. A week later, the principal called Evan to the office. He never came back to class. The rumor around school was that he'd been expelled after they searched his locker and found something concerning. Nobody ever said what. Nobody asked. We just assumed it was true. And for a while we felt powerful. We whispered about it at lunch like we were in on some secret. Tyler joked that we saved the school. I laughed too. But something about it made my stomach twist. Then, 3 months later, I was sitting in the cafeteria when the principal came on the intercom. He announced that a local man had been arrested, Evan's uncle, for possession of illegal firearms and explosives. My blood ran cold. It turned out Evan had been living with his uncle because his parents were overseas for work. The drawings and violent notes we'd made up, he'd actually been sketching stuff from his uncle's basement because he was scared and trying to tell someone without outing his own family. The school never officially said it, but word spread that Evan had told the police everything after being expelled. He'd apparently gone to a youth counselor, who helped him get in touch with authorities. So yeah, we lied to get him kicked out, and in doing so, we might have accidentally saved people, but it didn't feel like a win. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, because when it all came out, everyone at school started saying we knew something was wrong. that we were heroes. But I knew the truth. We hadn't known a damn thing. We lied because it was easy, because it made us feel clever, because it got us attention, and Evan had to lose everything. His school, his reputation, his peace of mind. Because of it. I didn't hear from him again for years. I tried to reach out once, after I graduated, just to say I was sorry. He never responded. I don't blame him. The others didn't handle it well either. Maya got super religious senior year, almost like she was trying to atone for something. Rachel avoided the topic completely. And Tyler? He leaned into it, bragged about how his gut was right. I think that's how he lives with himself, by pretending we were noble. As for me, I've replayed that year in my head more times than I can count. How different things could have gone. How I could have just said no when they started the rumors. How I could have defended someone instead of joining the mob. I tell myself that what we did accidentally led to something good, but it doesn't help me sleep at night, because we didn't save anyone. We just got lucky that the universe twisted our cruelty into justice. And I've never felt like more of a coward than I did the day I realized that. It's been almost a decade now. I'm 26, living in Chicago, working as a teacher. Every time I see a quiet kid sitting alone, I make a point to talk to them, to actually see them. Maybe it's my way of trying to undo what I can't take back. Because if there's one thing I've learned since then, it's that lies have a way of echoing long after the truth catches up. Update. It's been about 6 months since I posted my original story, and I honestly didn't expect anyone to care. I wrote it as a kind of confession, something I'd been carrying around for almost a decade that I needed to finally say out loud. I didn't think anyone would read it, let alone reach out. But a lot has happened since then. When I hit post, I didn't even realize how much I'd buried. I got messages from people who'd been bullied, people who'd been accused of things they didn't do, even a few teachers who said the story made them rethink how they handled troubled students. That part. It messed me up a bit, but in a good way, because for the first time, I wasn't just the scared kid who went along with something awful. I was facing it head on. But the biggest thing that's happened is this. Evan found my post. I still don't know exactly how. Maybe someone from our hometown saw it. Maybe Reddit's algorithm threw it at him, but he found it. 3 weeks after posting, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "I think we went to school together." My heart stopped when I saw his name at the bottom. He didn't sound angry, which was almost worse. His message was calm, too calm. He said he'd read my post twice, that he wasn't sure how to feel about it, but that it was strangely validating to see someone admit what happened. He said he'd wanted to hate all of us for years, and that he probably still did, to some extent. But that time had softened things. He told me that after the expulsion, he'd moved to another state to live with an aunt, and that it took him a long time to trust anyone again. He'd been homeschooled for his last 2 years of high school. Then he said something that stuck with me. I don't think I'll ever forget how it felt to walk down that hallway with everyone staring at me, whispering like I was a monster. But I also remember thinking, if they're that scared of me, maybe they'll stay away, and for a while, that was all I wanted. Distance. I read that line about 50 times. He told me he went to community college after finishing school, studied art and design, and now works as a freelance illustrator. He said he even does comic covers sometimes. I went to look him up. He's good, like really good. His art has this kind of haunting realism to it that's hard to describe. I couldn't stop staring at one piece, a sketch of a kid sitting in an empty hallway, everyone else blurred and faceless around him. It didn't take a genius to figure out what that meant. I wrote him back, I apologized, really apologized. Not with excuses or qualifiers this time. I told him everything. How it started as a stupid joke. How none of us thought it would go anywhere. How I froze when the adults started believing us. I told him I've thought about it for years, and that I didn't expect forgiveness. Just that he knew I wasn't proud of it. He replied the next day. He said he believed me. That sentence broke me. He wrote that he'd done a lot of therapy over the years, and had come to understand that kids can be cruel without realizing the gravity of what they're doing. That what hurt most wasn't even the lies. It was that not one person stood up for him. Not even the teachers. He said he used to wake up in the middle of the night, hearing the laughter, the whispers, the feeling of being something to be handled. He also said this, "I used to want you all to suffer like I did. But now, I think I just want to know you remember. That I wasn't crazy for how much it hurt." I cried reading that. I hadn't cried about any of it in years, not even when I first posted. We've actually exchanged a few more emails since then. I never expected that. He doesn't want to rekindle friendship or anything like that, and I wouldn't expect him to. But we've had some real conversations about high school, about what it's like to be adults carrying around old ghosts. He told me that the police had, in fact, found weapons at his uncle's house, that he'd tried to tell a teacher before, but she brushed him off because he had a vivid imagination. He said that when he got expelled, it was almost a relief. At least people noticed, he said, even if it was for the wrong reason. That hit harder than I can explain. I told him that if he ever wanted me to, I'd talk to the school, or anyone, really, to clear his name, but he said it's not worth it. The people who mattered already know. And he's not the same scared kid he used to be. Still, I've started the process of writing a letter to that high school, just to have it on record. Not for me, for him. I don't expect them to do anything about it, but it feels like something I need to do, like the least I can offer. The weirdest part of all this is that reconnecting with him has forced me to look at my own life differently. I've been teaching middle school for the last 3 years, and every time I see a student on the edge of the social circle, I make sure they're not invisible. I tell my colleagues, you never know what's really going on. Because I do know, I also told my friends about what happened. The ones from high school, Tyler, Maya, and Rachel. We'd all drifted apart over the years. But I texted them, sent them my post, and told them Evan reached out. Rachel called me crying. She said she'd thought about him too, that she'd told her husband about it once, and he didn't believe how bad it really was. She asked if I could pass along an apology if he was willing to hear it. I told her I'd ask. Maya didn't reply. Not at first. Then a week later, she texted a simple, I still dream about that day. I'm sorry, Tyler. He left me on red, which honestly didn't surprise me. When I told Evan, he said he didn't need to hear from anyone else. People cope how they can, he wrote. I just hope they learned something from it. That was the last message he sent me. I haven't heard from him since, and I'm not sure I ever will, but I think that's okay. We said what needed to be said. There's peace in that. Sometimes, late at night, I think about those drawings I saw all those years ago. The stick figures, the X's, the knife, and how I misread everything about them. I wonder how much of what we fear in others is just a projection of what we don't want to see in ourselves. If I could go back, I wouldn't just change what I did. I'd change the way I saw people entirely, because the truth is, what happened to Evan wasn't just his story. It was ours too. One we all wrote together out of fear, ego and ignorance, and if nothing else, at least now, finally, it's out in the open. Final update. It's been over a year since I shared the story about Evan, and I've thought about posting an update for months. Honestly, I wasn't sure if there was an update. I assumed life had moved on for everyone, that the past was safely tucked away in memory. But then something happened recently that made me realize the story isn't fully over. Not for me. At least after our email exchanges, I tried to leave Evan alone. I didn't want to intrude on his life or make him feel like he owed me anything. But a few weeks ago, I got a message from him on Instagram. He had a small following for his artwork, and he reached out with a simple line. Hey, I don't know if you'd want to see this, but I finished something inspired by those days. It was a comic. Not just any comic, it was a full short story about a quiet kid navigating a high school full of whispers, false accusations, and fear. The protagonist looked a lot like him. Though he went unnamed, the climax was chilling. The kid had to confront the people who turned their back on him. And instead of lashing out, he walked away, calm, collected. He wasn't seeking revenge. He was just taking his life back. I stared at it for what felt like hours. I'd seen this story through my own perspective for years. How we saved the school. How we did what we thought was right. But here was Evan, telling his version, not with anger or bitterness, just with quiet strength, and it hit me. We had no idea how close we'd come to destroying someone's life entirely. I replied, thanking him for sharing. I told him it was powerful, honest, and haunting. And he responded, saying he hoped it would make me think about the past differently. Not to punish me, but to make me understand the consequences of our actions. That was the first time I realized just how much he'd grown. Evan wasn't a scared kid anymore. He was a storyteller, someone taking trauma and turning it into art. After that, I felt compelled to do something I should have done years ago. I reached out to the high school anonymously, sending copies of Evan's comic and a letter explaining what had really happened back then. I didn't want credit. I just wanted the school to know that they had mishandled a situation and that a kid's life had been altered because of fear, gossip, and inaction. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But that wasn't the point. I also talked to my friends from high school, Tyler, Rachel, and Maya. I apologized to them again. Not for what we did to Evan directly, but for letting it happen, for letting fear dictate our actions. Rachel cried on the phone. Maya sent a long, reflective text about how she'd never realized how cruel we'd been. Tyler hasn't responded. That's Tyler. But the others acknowledged it, and that felt like a tiny step toward accountability. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on this. I teach now, and I see kids every day who are overlooked, misunderstood, or bullied. I try to catch them before things escalate. I try to speak up when no one else does. Evan's story has changed the way I approach my students. How I listen, how I notice, how I act, and me personally, I still carry guilt. I probably always will. But it's quieter now, tempered by action. I've learned that apologies alone don't erase mistakes, but responsibility and reflection can turn regret into something constructive. As for Evan, I haven't heard from him since the comic exchange, and that's okay. I don't need closure from him. Seeing him thrive, seeing him take a traumatic experience and turn it into something meaningful, is enough. That's the real resolution. He's living his life, not defined by the mistakes of the past. And I'm living mine, trying to be better, so I don't repeat those same mistakes. Sometimes, life gives you a second chance without asking. A chance not to rewrite the past, but to handle the future differently. And that's the part I hold on to every day, because the truth is, the past shapes you, but it doesn't have to define you. Stories. Number 13. Driveway pavers did our driveway instead of our neighbors, and now they're trying to bill us. I still can't believe this happened, but it did. And I need to get it off my chest, because it's been driving me absolutely nuts. I live in a suburban neighborhood in Ohio, and I've always prided myself on staying on top of things like home maintenance. So when our neighbor Mark told us he had scheduled some pavers to redo his driveway, I didn't think much of it. A few days later, I noticed some trucks parked in front of our house. I assumed it was Mark's crew. They were unloading bags of cement, stacks of pavers, and a ton of equipment. I didn't think twice, figuring, okay, the neighbors are upgrading, cool. About an hour later, I noticed the crew had started breaking up our old driveway, not Mark's ours, and not the small section that needed repairs. We were talking our entire 30-foot driveway. My stomach dropped. I ran outside yelling and asked Jared, the supposed crew foreman, what the hell they were doing. He looked at me like I was the problem. Sir, we're here to do the driveway. Your neighbor scheduled it, right? No, I said, my voice rising. Mark scheduled his driveway. This is ours. And we didn't ask for anything, Jared shrugged. It's on the schedule. Here's the contract. I took the contract and scanned it. Sure enough, it had our address at the top. Even though I'd never signed anything, I asked Jared if Mark had maybe accidentally submitted our address, and he said he wasn't sure, but that the company would take care of it. Long story short, by the end of the day, our entire driveway was ripped out, and the crew left a giant mess. The next morning, I called the company, Summit Paving and Construction, to tell them there had been a mistake. I explained that we hadn't authorized any work, that we didn't want a new driveway, and that they needed to fix the mess immediately. That's when things went downhill. The woman on the phone, Karen, said, "Well, the work is already done. You're going to have to pay." I laughed. I couldn't even process it. Pay? For what? We didn't sign anything. You didn't have our authorization. You literally destroyed our old driveway. Karen insisted that because the work was performed at our property, it was our responsibility. She said they had a contract with Mark, but apparently, the scheduler had inputted the wrong address. And mistakes happen. I don't know how they thought this was remotely acceptable. Mistakes happen? They literally ruined my driveway, left jagged concrete edges, and now they were trying to bill us for it. I asked to speak to a manager. The manager, Tom, called me back the same day and said something that blew my mind. "We can give you a 10% discount if you accept the invoice." I lost it. Are you kidding me? You demolished my driveway and think 10% off makes this okay? Tom paused and then said, "Well, you could always pay for it and then submit a claim to your insurance if you want to pursue reimbursement." I hung up. My wife, Samantha, and I spent the next hour pacing our front yard, staring at the jagged concrete mess, trying to figure out what to do. We didn't want to pay them. We didn't want to get into a legal battle. But we also didn't want to live with a broken driveway for months. So we took pictures, hundreds of them, documenting every crack, every leftover pile of dirt, every crooked slab of concrete. We called our homeowner's insurance. Allied Home explained the situation, and they were surprisingly helpful. They told us that since the work was done without authorization, and it resulted in property damage, it could potentially be covered as a mistaken contractor claim. Meanwhile, I tried talking to Mark. I knocked on his door, fully expecting him to be horrified. He opened it, coffee in hand, and said, "Oh wow, I'm so sorry. I thought they were coming next week. I never meant for this to happen." We went over the scheduling emails together. Sure enough, Mark had requested a Tuesday, but someone at Summit Paving had input Wednesday, and for some reason, the address auto-filled as ours instead of his. A simple clerical error, but with catastrophic consequences. The insurance adjuster, Danielle, came out the next day. She looked at the mess and said, "Yeah, this isn't your fault. Summit Paving is liable for this. We can cover the replacement costs, and you should pursue the company for damages as well." I immediately drafted an email to Summit Paving's corporate office, including all pictures, the contract error, and notes from the insurance adjuster. I told them explicitly that we would not be paying a cent, and if they pursued collections, we would escalate to small claims court. They emailed back a week later. Their first draft of the response was aggressive. "Work completed, payment expected," I replied with the insurance documentation, photos, and a stern note that we had legal counsel ready. That seemed to do the trick. Within 48 hours they backtracked, agreed to reimburse our deductible, and promised to redo the driveway correctly at no cost. Finally, about 2 months later, the driveway was replaced. It wasn't perfect, but it was done professionally, and I didn't have to spend my life savings to fix someone else's clerical error. Looking back, I'm still furious about how Summit Paving handled the entire situation. The fact that they had the audacity to try and charge us for destroying our property is unbelievable. But I learned some lessons too. Always document everything. Never assume a contractor knows what they're doing. And double-check addresses, even if it feels ridiculous. Mark and I laugh about it now, awkwardly. Because nothing about that situation was funny at the time, Samantha still refuses to park in the garage for fear they'll mix up the schedule again. And I check our mailbox like a hawk whenever a contractor calls. It's been a nightmare, but at least we didn't get stuck paying for someone else's mistake. And if nothing else, we now have a driveway story that no one will ever believe.